man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while, when will the lonely voice of youth cry what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Well, welcome. What we're doing today is Telos or Telos. Tomato, Telos, same thing. We've got our Sampal, big bottle, because it's going to be a long day here. Get some wafer crackers. Yum. Got toasted coconut snack crackers. Got some tea from the Table Rock Tea Company, and I got some Boylan's root beer because root beer is great. So yeah, good. I love that song. I love my intro song. It's fantastic. I'm so lucky to have a great intro song like that for these live streams. So we're talking about Telos, and I've got my notes all set. I have some sad announcements. Well, not sad, but maybe relieving. The next 2 weeks, no streams. I'm on the road. So I'm going to Tennessee, back to Dollywood next weekend. And after that, I got to drive up to New England, attend a party, and drive back. So I don't think I'll be staying very long up in New England. So I'm just going to miss a couple Fridays, unfortunately. But that's okay, because I don't even know what will come after Telos. So when we're talking about this Telos, this final cause, and that's what matters the most, right? It's the thing that matters the most. It's all about prioritization. It allows you to prioritize things. Because things are out of order if you don't know what the end result is supposed to look like. And the problem is you always have a telos. Whenever you're doing anything, it's there. And as Father Eric summed up well, telos comes first in intent and last in action. And it goes to Jordan Peterson's deep point. What are you up to? Do you know what you're up to? Because sometimes you don't. That's when the telos has you. So it isn't some magic bullet, right? It can fool us when we point at it without knowing it, right? When we're possessed by it, we bend our view of reality. If you think that words are violence, you have started from a telos and reasoned backwards from there. I can state that axiomatically. It's a deep confusion to start from words are violence. Because now all speech is potentially dangerous. And not just dangerous, but deadly, because violence can result in death. Can words cause Death, eh, they can influence it. People can get you pretty upset and either drive you to murder or suicide, uh, which is a special brand of murder. And we have to be careful because if there's something you cannot manifest, so there's a goal, a telos, a purpose that you have, a reason for your action. It's not a valid telos unless it can be manifest. Because the telos starts in your imagination. It starts with a potential and your engagement in that potential. But it must end in the world outside of your head. There's a difference between goodness that conforms, say, to a standard, and good as in being is good. Good as in conforms is good versus bad. The confirmation is 100%, it's good. The confirmation is 2%, it's bad. Versus good as being, the opposite of which is evil. That's where telos is. Now you can have a telos to make a good thing as measured by a standard. That's not a problem. But your telos is to make the thing or to manifest the thing. And your statement of goodness is a measurement of quantity, whereas good and evil is a quality. And the way that you can spot a telos that is not for the good is you can look at what you're dealing with. Are you dealing with what is around you at the moment? Are you concerned about the specific manifestation? Or are you looking towards the future? Are you looking up at an ideal? And we need telos because we live in a field of potential. That's why we need it. We need a way to navigate the manifestations around us, emergence and emanation. And it impacts everything. It impacts computers. The reason why spell check doesn't work as well anymore as it did 5 years ago is because they're using language models for spell check. Now, spelling is a subset beneath language, and that gets into proper layers, levels of analysis. We'll cover that someday. Telos is there for sure, right? But if you're using a language model to figure out my spelling, you're probably ignoring the number one cause of spelling errors, which is mistypes. You're not paying attention to which keys are closer to which keys, and therefore which are more likely to be depressed by accident. And you're trying to project into the future because it's the language model. Well, what's this person trying to say? Well, if I made a typo and you were trying to figure out what I was saying from the typo and then working backwards, you can come up with all kinds of interesting typos that would never occur to you if you're using a simple stochastic model based around the keyboard. If you're looking at something from a computer perspective and you're saying, well, what I really want to do is do these calculations very, very quickly and display them, you can display them so fast no one can read them. What good's the display? Because you're aimed at fast. You're not aimed at useful or useful for the operator. Where does telos come from? It comes from agents, from persons, not computers. Computers are scientific. Science is without a telos. doesn't have one. It presumes that one already exists. It is within the frame of a telos. It is not the frame of the telos. There is no objective material reality for science to operate within. It has to operate within our agentic telos. And then it can serve us, not the other way around. Assuming a telos or a final cause or like a destination, an end result, a goal, and then working backwards is a very common thing that you see all the time. It takes very well-known forms, usually a bunch of abstractions, like be a good person, without explaining or defining what that is in the context in which it's used. Effective altruism. Okay, I don't know if I agree or not. What are you defining as effective, and what are you defining as altruism? Is it altruism to end someone's suffering by killing them? And then what are you defining suffering as? Well, they're suffering because they'll never be smart enough to understand particle physics. There are people that think like that. That's not an example I pulled out of nowhere. You're working backwards from this idea that you already have predefined in your head about what's good for others. You can be a good person by being effectively altruistic. Maybe, but that's not clear. It's one of the problems with telos. You've already presumed the telos, and then you're working your way backwards through it. So you're saying, well, the only reason why Elon Musk would buy Twitter is to make money. Really? And therefore, he's buying Twitter to make money. Okay. Maybe. Do businessmen only buy businesses to make money? Because most businesses fail. If they do, they're all terrible and they should all be fired, because 95% of businesses fail almost immediately. I mean, if that's the reason that you're doing something, you should not get into business ever. No one should. It's the risk is too high. Of course, that's not the reason. You're looking at the world backwards. You're assuming the economic frame as the goal of a person that you don't even know. And maybe that would be your goal. Like, fair enough. Maybe you're that shallow. I have no idea. Or you're looking at political power as their goal and then working backwards from why they got there or how they got there, or what they did to get there, given that their goal was power. What if you're wrong about their goal? What if their telos wasn't power? Probably misapprehended a bunch of stuff. Procedures get in the way of telos. If a goal is to be safe or not get sued, then it isn't well-being of your patient. You need to know what procedures are static, closed, contained, and presumptive of static, closed, and unchanged telos. Not getting sued or being safe is a closed system. And it only works within well-defined parameters, but they're all outside of your control, every single one of them. Following procedures to make sure that happens just takes out all the quality. Procedural things are static and unchanging. They involve a direct, linear, one-to-one relationship. Or maybe several of them, but they're one-to-one relationships. It's not the world we live in. We live in a vast world full of potential, full of all kinds of connections, where you pull one string and 7 things move unexpectedly. That's why telos is important. You got to make sure the one thing that you think can move from the string, A, can move from the string, uh, B, is worth moving, given that a bunch of things you don't know about are also going to move. Materialists, those people who think it's material first that moves the world and not telos, which is in potential, they focus on a telos around measurement, right? Not the highest, not virtues and values, right? They're provided with an excuse for thinking everything's okay because what they measure is fine. But quality matters most, not just more. It matters most. The quality of your care of your patient, if you're a doctor, matters more than you not getting sued. You can't prevent from getting sued, no matter how good the care is. It's a variable you don't control because people are crazy. That's why you have to focus on that the most, because there's going to be a bunch of side effects anyway. That's definitely going to happen. Then how do we deal with quality? Virtues, values, the forms, or better yet, the eidos, better word, hierarchy, the highest. That is proper telos, proper goal, proper reason, not reasoning, reason. And the reason why the materialism fails is because measurements lag. You can't measure something until after it's happened. And you can't measure it in relation to the past until after it's happened. So you never know when you're at the bottom until after you've bounced off of it. You don't notice the bad actions of today for years or decades or generations sometimes. That's why looking to potential, looking to the future, understanding the priority of what you're doing today is so important. And you have to manage it because you can't always pick the infinite future for the immediate present. You don't have that option. As things get further out in time, they get more fuzzy. And that's what you're measuring risk-wise in your head anyway. Nassim Taleb talks about this in his books wonderfully. He talks about we make decisions based on risk. Well, how do you assess risk? Well, you have to know what your goal is. If your goal in investing in the stock market is to make money, you're screwed. The only goal you need in investment of any kind, but especially the stock market, is not to lose all your money. Because the minute you lose all your money, you go to zero. As Peterson says, zero is a funny number. Yeah, you hit zero, you're done. Taleb does a wonderful job of laying this out. You have to not lose all your money. The making money will happen, as it turns out. But when your telos is wrong, when you're looking at the wrong thing, when you're going for the wrong end result, the odds that you'll succeed go down. They don't go to zero, but anyone can get lucky. Aiming at the higher, at the thing that's highest, prevents some of the bad effects down the road by avoiding them entirely. Looking up means looking into an infinite future. Time re-enchants when you look up. It becomes an issue. It becomes something you can really take seriously. Now you can decide between comfort now and comfort later. You cannot do that if you're too focused on the present or if you're too focused on the material, because the material is the manifest. And once the manifest has manifested, now you are a slave to it. The way we control what manifests is with the telos. That's how it all happens. Is it perfect control? No. But it's still your best bet. Can we do without telos? Can we just ignore it? Can we ignore time? Or do we always have to have a telos? And when it's quantity and measurement and material, we lose the ability to discern because we are just believing measurements rather than our intuition. And measurements are useful and measurements are required. But if you rely only on measurement, you ignore your intuition. And your intuition is the thing that tells you when something's not right. Well, if something's not right, is your measurement going to tell you that? Or is your measurement just going to report right? It's a good question. So what happens when quantity comes first and you still have a telos? Now you need to look down and accept some belief that you aren't engaging with. You are submitted to some measure which someone else came up with or gave to you, and you never rationalized. You never even noticed it. Now what? That isn't good because it wasn't aimed at the good to begin with. That doesn't mean you can't adopt somebody else's telos. You sure can, but you better know that's what you're doing. You don't want to be looking down. You want to at least believe in the idyllic vision of that other person. And that's the quality of a good leader. It's not the quality of leadership, because leadership can't be encompassed in one person, but quality of a good leader. And the problem is we have enough quantity to save everything. We have enough food to feed everyone. We have enough water to make sure everyone has enough water. So we can save everything. But we don't have enough will to save the important stuff. What's important? What's your telos? You need the will to do that. That's where your will is aimed. It's aimed at your telos. If you're doing something, there was a will behind it, yours. Do you know where that will was aimed? Do you know what you were after? Do you know what you're up to? Are you sure? Did the results match? I mean, the wonderful thing about pragmatism, did the results match? Because if they didn't, maybe you didn't know what you were up to. Maybe you got hijacked in your telos. Maybe you found yourself out of work because you weren't paying attention to the fact that you were angry and resentful at everybody you worked with. And so you trucked yourself out of the job. I've seen people do that. I've seen them do it with 4 or 5 jobs in a row. They can't start at the bottom and work their way up. They're focused on the now. Well, I'm worth a certain amount of money right now. Okay, maybe. Does anybody know that? If they don't, you're going to have to prove it. Whether it's true or not, it's not relevant. You still got to prove the truth. If you're not willing to wait that out, you're going to end up with a problem. When you give something attention by treating it as a telos, you can create problems that otherwise would not exist because we create reality. Not entirely. We co-manifest it, really. But if you act like everyone hates you, or no one loves you, or everyone's just using you to some ends, then you're going to create a hell for yourself unnecessarily. It's a problem that otherwise would not exist. If you act like economics is the most important thing, you could look at something like journalism. And I have a video on the fall of the fourth estate. And you could say, Well, the problem with journalism is that internet technology came along and it became all about the clicks. And I would say, how's that possible? And you could point at all the online journalism that's bad. And I would say, sure, that's all the online journalism. What about the journalism that never got paid by clicks, ever? Is that good? Because that's the journalism that fell. The new journalism didn't fall, it never ascended. You create a problem that doesn't exist when you act as if the world is in some way that it's not. If you think it's a white patriarchy, then yeah, you've created a problem. Can you fix it? Can you manifest the solution? Maybe it's a bad telos. And how much attention should we spend on temporary things like current events? Are they part of your telos? Are they related to your job, to your daily life, to is your telos something that will last? Because your time, energy, and attention is important. And it's limited. It has a priority. Telos helps you direct that towards your priorities, whatever those priorities may be. You need to spend your time, energy, attention on that which lasts the most and is the highest, the most important. And again, this isn't a solution. I'm just trying to point your attention to something and give you the contrast and the nuance to engage with telos because it's driving you, whether you realize it or not. And the problem is that with a telos, you can justify anything logically. You can use logic, reason, and rationality to justify any kind of behavior. It just depends on your goal, on your telos. You see this in Star Trek Next Gen. Data is good logic, and Lore, his brother, is bad logic. What makes them different is one loves humanity and the other one doesn't. He's jealous of it. Have you seen that play out anywhere recently in the news, on the streets, with your friends? I have. I like what Jordan Peterson said about, make friends with people who want the best for you. Someone's upset because you live somewhere that they deem has better weather or didn't have lockdowns for 3 years or doesn't try to take away your guns or whatever it is. And people see that. Maybe they don't even want that, but they're jealous that you have it. That happens. And their logic justifies their jealousy. I'm sure of that. It's a problem. You can use the telos to justify anything. Is it good to see people suffer? Is it good to let them suffer? Maybe we should kill them and then they won't suffer. What if they're depressed? This isn't hypothetical. This isn't theoretical. This is Canada right now. They'll put you to death for saying you're depressed and agreeing that, maybe you shouldn't be around because you're just suffering too much. Right now. And who knows where that ends? Probably nowhere until the deaths stack up and somebody actually does something about it and says, this is not the telos that we want to have within our country. What makes a country? Commonality, shared telos, maybe? Maybe. Look, you have to respond based on the telos. You have to respond based on the telos long before material manifests. because it's about the potential, it's about the future, it's about the ideal, the eidos, the form. When you fail to do that, you are a slave to the material. You're captured, you're trapped, you're stuck in the materialism. You're acting as an NPC, a robot, a slave. You're effectively a zombie. Why? Because you are reacting and responding to the material manifestation which was created by a telos, somebody else's, not yours, because it's already manifest. You can whine about the businessman that made $1 million. You can say, look what he does all day, nothing. What if he started the business? What if he worked 100 hours a week, which is not uncommon for small business owners, by the way, um, and built that business from scratch and suffered for 5 or 10 or 15 years before it became a success? Because that's the norm. Did you see any of that? Or have you collapsed time and looked at it and said, I know what his Telos was. It was to make money. And look at all the money he's making. I must be right. That's the backwards reverse Telos trick again. He has all this money, so that must have been his goal. Really? So he started a business, which usually costs money. Doesn't make any sense to spend your money in that case, but whatever. And he suffered for however many years to build the business, not knowing it was going to make money, because nobody ever knows when they're starting a business they're going to make money. That just doesn't ever happen. You're hopeful, but some people get lucky and they start 3 businesses and only one is ever a success, usually their first one. Some people just persevere at the same thing for 10 or 12 or 15 years. But if you're looking at a business that's manifest, you have to be an employee. You didn't build it. So to some extent, yeah, you're a slave to whoever owns it. Sure. That's because you didn't build your own thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's easier. It's a lot easier. I've built businesses. I built 10. Sometimes I had co-founders, sometimes I didn't. Only one of them has really ever worked out, by the way. Didn't make me $1 million. Or hasn't yet. It could, I suppose, someday. You never know. But if you're not building it, if you're not taking responsibility for it, if it's not yours, if you don't own it, you are in some sense an NPC or a slave or a robot to somebody else's Telos. And to some extent, you kind of have to be, because there were some things here before you. You can whine about the conditions. Like I can say, oh, they ruined the food supply on me with this monoculture and this pasteurized milk. And now I have an immune disease, which I do. I don't know what caused it though, but fairly sure that, some of the conditions of the food and all that had something to do with it. But I was born into that. I didn't have a choice about that. That wasn't something I can take responsibility for. I didn't feed myself my first few years of life. And when I did, quote, feed myself, that food was brought into the house by somebody else, because I wasn't shopping for myself until, quite a while. I don't think I was going to grocery stores till I was like 14. It's a long time to have whatever it is you're engaged with ruined. And then did you have the information to know about the monocultures? Not when I was 14, I didn't. But I mean, it can be worse. Like, you could be a literal zombie. You could run around the world stuck in NPC mode, believing that economics runs the world and the reason why journalism has failed is because of clicks. Or the reason why Twitter is so terrible is because a few elite people control it, or believing that the algorithm is running your life. If you believe the algorithm is running your life, I've got news for you. Now you're right. I control all my algorithms. Not perfectly, but pretty close on a couple platforms. Those algorithms need you. They feed off of you. You are their master to some extent. And when you're not their master, you disengage. There's no excuse. You can't use that as an excuse. Just don't use it. Everyone else is. No, everyone else is not. And so what? If everyone else jumps off a bridge, are you going to jump off the bridge? What are you, a lemming? I know about the lemming thing. Still, one of the best video games of all time is Lemmings. My former roommate, by the way, wrote the Lemmings hint book, or co-authored it with a very good friend of mine, who also authored the original Mac version of, I think it was Lemmings 2, but it might have been Lemmings. Anyway, the reason why you can speed up in Lemmings is his fault, just to let you know. I remember selling Lemmings at the Boston Museum of Science. They did an expo for children's education that I was at, because I knew the people who were heading up Signosis North America, because my friends worked there. They let me come in and help, and then fed me afterwards. A nice meal. Didn't make any money, but that was okay. I spent a good 4 hours at the museum hawking Lemmings to people who wanted a good video game to use for learning, which it was. It was great. I really enjoyed that game. But you're not a lemming. You're not a zombie. Unless you want to be. Like, you do that to yourself. Are you entirely under control of all the things your NPCs? No, you're not. But you are in some control, and you can take responsibility for that. You can say, you know what? I am an agent that can manifest a Telos. I have to pay attention to that Telos. Otherwise, my time, energy, and attention will be hijacked, stolen, and given over to some force or agency or spirit or person or system that I do not choose, in a way that I do not choose. It's up to you. But it is up to you. Are NPCs real? Yes. Are robots real? Yes. Are zombies real? Yes. I saw zombies in Edinburgh, Scotland. No question about it. Straight across. They look straight, beautiful city, gorgeous city, absolutely mind-blowingly gorgeous. And they're looking straight across at all the other people following along. It was terrifying. You could feel, well, I could feel them chewing on the bones of their ancestors. You have to take responsibility for the fact that you're an agent in this world and that you have agency. You have to pay attention to that telos. And you have to use it to your advantage, or somebody else will use it to theirs. They will steal your time, energy, and attention. They will suck your soul dry if you let them. It's up to you. Look, maybe the cost of manipulating your own algorithms is very high. Maybe the cost of manipulating your algorithms means an extra 4 hours a week for 3 months. And maybe that's too high to use Twitter. Don't use Twitter. Problem solved. You don't like the trade-off? Don't make the trade-off. I had a goal for Twitter. My Twitter feed is awesome. More than half of it is pretty pictures of exotic places or nature or whatever. And that's, a good half of what I post. Flowers, turtles, birds, plants, whatever. It's reciprocal. You feed the algorithm feeds you. Is it going to give you a perfect, consistent? No. But I don't want perfect and consistent, so it's all good. With the Telos, you have responsibility. You can properly take your role as a responsible agent. Good agency is wrapped up in Telos. The difference is in the relationship. What is the point? Where is it pointing? That changes the relationship. The important thing to pay attention to is, are you doing your job for money? Or are you doing your job to do good work, which also happens to make you money? People who do better work get paid more for the same work. Why? Because the work doesn't matter. The work quality of the work product matters. This is what Karl Marx didn't understand because he's an idiot. Never talks about the difference between, what if you have two workers and one finishes first and the other one finishes second? What if one finishes in half the time? Because there are people like that. It's a Pareto curve, baby. Technically a Cauchy distribution. Read Taleb. What that means is that there are workers who are really, really, really slow and really, really, really fast. When I was at UPS, I was really, 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 really fast. I was so fast. I was so good at unloading trucks, and I was a decent sorter too. I wasn't the fastest sorter, but I was up there. But when I was unloading trucks, I was so good they let me do 2 shifts. They told me, you can work overtime anytime you want. You do not have to ask for permission. Everybody else, literally everybody else that worked at that plant had to ask for permission except me. When I was doing my call center job, everybody else had to ask for permission to do overtime except me. You just work the overtime and mark your time card. It's already approved. What? What? Yeah, I unloaded trucks better than anybody else. Yeah, I took more phone calls than anybody else. Not on average. Not on average. I always took more phone calls than anybody else. Always. I always unloaded the LL Bean truck faster than anybody else. Sometimes that was my detriment because the sorters would get pissed, but the problem with the unload, it relies on the sorters, and the sorters get overloaded, especially if the management doesn't quite get the flow right or the flow changes. It's not always management's fault. Best managed company I ever worked for. Worst thing that ever happened to me in life. My first job was UPS. Holy crap, did that screw me up? I thought, decently managed company. It's not bad. There's a problem here, a problem there. But, it's not bad. I get out into the world. I've never worked for or heard of a company as well managed as UPS since. Ever. Ever. Not FedEx. I've talked to people who work at FedEx. Not as well managed. Not as well run. I've never even come close. UPS was really well run. Why? Because you can't lie about boxes. What is the telos of UPS? We need to get the package from here to there, period, intact. That's it. That's literally all they cared about. Now, you could go to UPS and you could say, they don't care about the people. And I will say, the people was not their primary concern. That is true. Not that they didn't care about their people, because they did. They were very nice, actually. The people that didn't get treated, quote, well by management deserved every single thing they got, with one exception, but that was around a manager and not around anything else, because there are bad people in the system. Their telos was to get the packages. So we'll just take my plant, which was, I think, the 3rd largest in the country at the time, or the 3rd largest in the world, actually. Their purpose is to get the packages in from the load, get them up, sorted out to the high picks, down to the sorters, sorted, loaded into other trucks. And then those trucks need to get on their way. And man, when you were a sorter and you sort by, you had 12, is it 12? Might have been more than 12. Wow, technically it's more than 12. It's at least 14. Different places to put a package. So you got packages coming on a belt. You got to move them to the right place. You got to read the zip code and put them in the right place. Not an easy job. It took a long time for me to learn sorting. You just memorize quite a few zip codes and exceptions and all kinds of things. If you didn't do that right, they'd take you off the sort line. And that was the end of your sorting. And then you were back down to lower pay in some cases. Um, did they care whether or not I made the amount of money I wanted to make? No, they cared about the packages. That's their job. That's their Telos. That's what they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to privilege you and your screw ups over their customer satisfaction. They're just not supposed to. Your Telos should be to get better at all things. Reclaim your responsibility, your agency. Pay attention to your Telos. That way you know where to prioritize and how to prioritize and where you fit. I didn't build UPS. I didn't make that company. I was perfectly happy there being an unloader. It was fantastic. Unload the trucks. And then when I was a sorter, perfectly happy to be a sorter. Loved sorting. Very challenging job, very demanding. Actually, it's the thing that made me quit. Well, the evil lying manager made me quit, but different story. What are you paying attention to? Are you paying attention to the end result, or are you paying attention to something higher? I'm not saying ignore the end result. I'm saying, what are you paying attention to? What are you more concerned with? Maybe doing the good thing for your 4-year-old child is to spank him or her. I don't know, but it could be. Is your Telos to make sure your child's happy every moment of its life and has no suffering or no discomfort? That's probably going to come back to haunt you later. Take responsibility. That's what the Telos allows you to do. And you see these attempts to get around Telos. Or at least some people do, and then I have to think about them and put them in my monologue somehow. Jesse. Something like telepathy is wanting the telos of communication to manifest without an action. It's a fantasy. I want to be able to communicate information to you by thinking it. Why? Because I don't want to take responsibility for trying to communicate something to you using all the complexities of the language, whether that be the spoken language, the body language, the tonal language, my presence, having to do something to communicate with you, whether that's pick up the phone or get online and fire up a Zoom meeting or a Discord call or drive to your house, go find you where you're working in the field and talk to you, risk bothering you. I'd rather have telepathy. Wouldn't we all? You want to have telepathy? I want a pony? It's disappointment all around. None of us are getting what we want. Sucks. And I mentioned this before, but it bears recapitulation here. You know what doesn't work without Telos? Logic, reason, and rationality. Telos comes first. Nothing works without it. It's logical, reasonable, and rational to kill somebody if they're suffering. We used to do that with horses. Horse gets a broken leg, you shoot it. Not a personal fan. I love animals, but that used to happen. It's a hard decision to make. You can justify all kinds of things. You could kill millions of people on that thesis. No problem. Why? Because you're bad Telos. How do I know? Because you're killing people. It's not that hard. Do I want to wait for the manifestation? No, but sometimes you have to. But if you wait for manifestations, and hopefully if you catch them early enough, you can avoid all the bad things. It's when you ignore the manifestations and you go, oh yeah, you know what? I'm just tweaking the system. Those first few hundred dead people, nah, don't worry about that. That was just an anomaly. They were outliers. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. 300 million people later. The telos happens at the frames that you're using with the world or the levels, right? And again, I mean, someday I'll talk about, say, proper ways to understand layers of analysis. So you can imagine, and the telos scales, right? But as you scale it, you're changing the time frame usually. This is one of the deep points that I think is really underrated that Peugeot talks about with the spirit of a city in his talk with John Vervaeke, which is very good about this topic, where he was like, "A city communicates with you," and John was like, "No, it doesn't." And he was like, "Yeah, the city can send you a letter," right? Which is sort of like a gotcha moment. But John, not being deterred by simple gotcha moments where you're definitely wrong, continued. Well, it's not conscious because it takes too long. It's like what? So you're saying a larger brain shouldn't take longer to make the same calculation as a smaller brain? Really? Is that your materialist, physicalist, reductionist way of thinking about the world? Because that's wrong, for sure. It's not what you'd expect in materialism at all. You'd expect the opposite. Expect exactly what Peugeot described. But when you're going through multiple agents, there's that whole game of telephone, right? Yeah, things are going to change. More opportunity for things to get messed up. But also, you can't have a city without multiple agents by definition. So, trade offs. The telos of the city is not to save every single person in the city, it's to save the most people in the city. And maybe you're not in the most category. That sucks. And the telos of the country and telos of the city may be at odds. And your telos may be at odds. Your telos should be to protect your family, for example. And maybe the city can't do that because it's gotten rid of all its police, because it had a bad telos to get rid of police for whatever reason. Or maybe it had a telos of nicer policing. And in the process of implementing that telos, it did a bunch of things that caused a bunch of police to say, I ain't sticking around for this. I'm out of here. It's not a one-to-one relationship. Like these things can manifest all kinds of different ways without anybody suspecting that that's going to happen. They're second order effects. We call them unintended consequences because we like to be fancy with the language. This is what happens when you do something is you change a bunch of things that you know nothing about. That's what happens when you do something. Sorry, bad news. You can't quite predict it. Not all of it, not well. And every once in a while, somebody comes along and does that once for one thing. Great. You got lucky. Fantastic. I'll take a note of that. Everyone gets lucky sometimes. We're all lucky to be alive. You can believe in someone else's telos or the telos of a country or of your state or of your community or of your church without understanding it. What do you think happened after the Weimar Republic? Oh, look at that guy. He's saying some pretty interesting things. I don't quite understand all the implications of what he's saying. Maybe neither did he, by the way, although he probably did. But I don't know that. Doesn't excuse any. I don't care if you know or not. I'm a pragmatist. Makes no matter to me. Are you incompetent or are you evil or are you just stupid? I don't care. I'm looking at results, kid. Hate to break it to you. I don't know your heart. You could put in diversity, inclusion, and equity. Yes, I'm using the original ordering. And the effects are terrible because the first and second order effects are awful. Is everybody who jumps on board with diversity, inclusion, and equity a bad person? No, some are just stupid. Some are just incompetent. Some of them just trusted the wrong people. Some of them just got fooled by a soothsayer. See last week's live stream for soothsaying. Fair enough. We can't know the whole world. Everybody knows there's a better way to educate people. So if somebody comes along with a different way to educate, how do you know it's not better? Haha, there's the problem. What's the telos? If you place the telos incorrectly, you get a bad impact because you can force a first order effect and get a bad set of second order effects. What makes you a good person or a bad person? What identifies you in your community? Your telos. I'm a good accountant. I'm going to do the accounting for my church. Okay. Maybe you don't even do accounting in your day job. Maybe you took accounting in school and you really enjoyed the order that it brought. There's a beauty in order. Maybe you're in charge in your family. Maybe you're the one your family looks to fix things when they screw them all up. Maybe. Maybe. That's your identity within the family. You don't have one identity, though. You've got lots of identities because you exist in lots of places at once. And sometimes those things conflict. That's ethics. What is your telos? I talked about this in my video on navigating patterns with Sam Harris' highest value. He didn't care about the dead children in the basement. He cared about knowledge. He cared about the sacred church institution of knowledge called university that Trump soiled with his terrible behavior. Everyone got their money back, by the way. You know, that greedy Trump guy? Yeah, he just ate the cost of that whole experiment. That went poorly for him. And he felt bad and paid everybody back. Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah, let me tell you about colleges I know in Boston that are ripping people off knowingly. I don't think I'll name them. Uh, I might have known people who were there at the time and knew what was going on and told me about them, though. Maybe. You think Trump University is bad? Have I got news for you? Oh, sweet, innocent child. Oh, sweet, innocent child. I know a lot about education and what goes on in that racket. And some of it is a racket, not all of it. And then you see Constantine Kitchen, same interview, the same like 5-minute segment or whatever it was. He doesn't care about knowledge, he cares about political corruption. That's his telos. He still doesn't care about the dead kids in the basement. Is he a good person? Sam Harris a good person? I don't know. If you don't care about dead kids in a basement when you know whose basement it is, are you a good person? If you'd rather worry about something else first? What should your priorities be? Gee, I don't know, Mark. What's that? Your telos. That's how it sets your priorities. That's how it works. You have to know what your goal is. You have to know what you're going after. You have to understand these things, or you will be an NPC. You will be a robot. You will turn into a zombie. No, really, you will. Take responsibility for your telos. Know where you're going. You need to have a telos to navigate. You're not going to be able to navigate the world if you don't have a goal, a destination, a reason. You can't navigate without a telos. Somebody will navigate you if you don't take responsibility for navigating yourself. You don't want to be an NPC? Pay attention to your telos and pay attention to the teloses around you. How do you know them? You can look at results. Don't have to be big results. Do you have to wait till somebody shoots you to know that they're going to shoot somebody? No, you don't. You can see how people treat other people and go, you know what? Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in 10 years, but eventually that person's going to do something bad because they're unable to control their temper, or there's an agenda that they're working towards that they themselves don't understand or won't admit. These things happen. They're real. You can tell by how somebody treats the server at the restaurant whether or not they're a good person. That's not a joke or a trick. That's just simple observation. How many people are fooled by people being nice to them in the moment, but being crappy to everyone else? That's on you. You didn't pay attention. You got to watch that. Is someone listening to you? Or are they listening to themselves? Or are they listening to something in their head that they think is you? You can tell these things. You have to use your intuition, not just your rationality. You need both. And sometimes they're going to be in conflict, and sometimes you're going to need to make what seems like an arbitrary decision. Welcome to the world into which you were born. Along with the rest of us, stop acting special. And with that, I invite anybody who wishes to join. I will pin this link on navigating patterns where I'm able to do so. And I will have some sandpel because it's about that time. Ah, that's much better. I like Ethan's comment here. It's pretty good. I did see it earlier, but procedures evil confirmed. Yes. Yes. First in final cause. First in intent, final in action. I'm glad, Ethan, that you love my root beer. Very important. Root beer is very important to me. There used to be a root beer company called was it Mystic Seaport or just Mystic? I forget, but it was the Mystic Seaport Beverage Company or something. And they went out of business, but they made really good root beer. They're up in Connecticut. One day, my best friend was like, "We're going down to Mystic, Connecticut." And I'm like, "Oh, Mystic, Connecticut. Connecticut seashore is gorgeous. Like a big, long, southern-facing seashore, right? Tiny state, tiny state. Here in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut's like 10 minutes away. It's just New England's tiny. Till you get to Maine. Maine is a good sized state. So driving down, and I said, "Don't come back without Mystic Seaport root beer." And they had closed. He was like, "I swear, we looked everywhere, we couldn't find it." And I was like, "You're dead to me now," because of course I would say something stupid like that. That's kind of what I do. Ethan, identity must be placed in telos, not in measurement. Exactly. Well, yeah, measuring in relation to what? Right? The whole gauge theory thing becomes a problem. What did you measure in relation to again? The metric system. That's great. Does that tell me how heavy anything is? No, the imperial system corresponds to weight. within the range of human ability. So a lot of people, in fact, everybody I know of or have read about who comes from the metric system into the imperial system goes, oh, this is actually much more relatable to phenomenological experience. Yeah, it's designed on that. The telos was phenomenology and not science. When your telos is science, you have a crappy thing like the metric system, which, by the way, is crappy. Anselman, journalists are bought to produce propaganda and distractions. Well, no, I have a video on that. Anselman, you balance acceptance of the pros and cons dealt by providence and use your agency to exploit your limited potential. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. We have pirate partners attacking the stream. Hey, Sally. Oh, she's got the Sampel. She's in.
Howdy,
You
howdy.
show me the Sampel on screen, and you're right in the stream. That's it. That's all it takes. How are you doing?
I am good. I caught part of the monologue.
You probably caught most of the monologue. You just didn't catch it in monologue form.
Well, that's true. I really like the Locutus. It's Locutus, right? It's such a great example of hyperlogic in that duality. Also, I'm just biased to the next generation, so.
You like Locutus Borg, or do you like a lore Data's little buddy?
Lore. I'm trying to say lore. Thank you.
No problem. I didn't know which. Anselman, I like a slice of lemming in my tea. I do have my Table Rock Tea Company tea here, my marathon blend. I do not have a slice of lemon because I don't have any lemmings. But someone has lemon.
That would be more delicious. A slice of lemmings. It would be meatier.
That game is so awesome.
I don't even know anything about it.
Oh, Mills says this is very good. Well, I'm very glad to hear that, Mills. I'm glad you like it. Nathaniel said, some of this is reminding me of the Eightfold Path minus the Buddhist trap of staying on the treadmill. I see. Well, it's a lot like that.
Lore and data, like if you just think about the words lore and data, they both refer to information.
Yep. Exactly. Different types.
I hadn't thought about that.
Well, now you did. But that's the purpose of these things. Mills, freedom and responsibility are inseparable. Yes, well, that's true. Anselman, people often assume a greater understanding in their listeners than they actually have. Yes. And so are less explicit in communication. Yep. Only to then be aware of being misunderstood. That happens a lot more lately. I've got my theories. Jesse claims 10 minutes. So 25. What do we have an over under on the Jesse?
I mean,
we got to get a betting pool going.
that would be the definite take home prize.
Yeah. So what else did you catch other than my wonderful Star Trek Next Gen? That's an homage to you, ma'am. So that's you. I know you like that show, and when I can, because you mention it, it comes up in my brain, and then I can make the connections. I can't make connections by myself like that. So
I am just like, when we're trying to think about teloses, because it is not a commonplace word, I'm still into you need examples. And the interesting thing about that little partnership is 90 version, because you got two instruments of information and they have different teloses, and that's fantastic. Maybe when we were trying to hash out the telos nodes, I could have asked for teloses in fiction, and maybe that would have been an easier given, because teloses in fiction are already abstract, and so maybe it's not annoying as trying to get simple teloses in everyday life. Although I think we did a good job of that in the end. And
no, we did a fine job. Hold on, I want to adjust this. Nathaniel, can you say more on the point you made about how we create our reality? I am a Muppet, grasping as much of this stuff as I can. Excellent. Welcome, Muppet, fellow Muppet. Yeah, see, on the one hand, this is the easiest thing to understand in the whole universe. And on the other hand, it's terrifying. And it's really hard for people because they want, like, we're used to these complicated scientific, well, you see, it's the Big Bang. And then when you get right back down to the gluons and the no, I'm sorry, it's just not. Or string theory, where it's like, well, look, you've got these brains and they're bumping into one another, and that caused the Big Bang. No. And then there's singularity. No, this is easy. There's an ethereal realm. It's the realm of platonic forms, or eidos. I think it's a way better word. I think John Vervaeke is right about that. Eidos is a better word. And then there's the material realm, which is, the stuff, like the earth and the plants and, and then there's these Muppets in the middle. And the Muppets, they stand in between these two things. In other words, they have maybe not equal parts, maybe equal parts. I don't think it's equal. They have some parts ethereal and some parts material. And then what they do is they continue to knit that together to create reality. Now, on the one hand, this always frustrates me because this has to be patently obvious to everybody. No, really. Because every day you make decisions to do things. And once you make a decision to do something and you do it, all of the other things, it's never just one other thing, all of the other things didn't happen in reality, at least not in that order. And some things couldn't ever have happened because things decay over time, right? Entropy is real. And so if you miss a good sunset, you missed that sunset forever. If you didn't miss the sunset, the reality is different, period. End of statement. Like, it's not, and that you're doing that all the time. You're literally doing that all the time. You have a great deal of impact or influence and some level of control, a very small level, over how reality manifests. And the easiest way to understand this is to scale up a bit, I think, into the science fiction realm, because I love science fiction. I love good science fiction anyway. You can imagine that it's quite possible that within our grasp and technological capability, we can have exactly two choices for real. We can either build a Dyson sphere to protect the planet and regulate, whatever, or we can build a spaceship big enough to bring not only us, but enough of the planet with us to repopulate another planet. But we can't do both. Which one's real? Well, until you manifest it, neither, right? And so, Schrodinger's stupid cat is wrong. Although it does point out there are 3 states, but the potential to do that is neither is real because it's still potential. When we do one of those things, we have created reality and booted out the other version of reality. So we knit together, if you want to put it in Christian terms, heaven and earth. That's how crazy Christians might talk about it. So that's what I mean. It's not our reality that we're creating. It's reality. And we need to be common enough in our creation of that reality. Otherwise, everything goes to chaos. That's what chaos is. Everyone going in different directions. And Manuel and I did a stream earlier this week. Was that Thursday? And wonderful stream. And we were pointing at this Michael Sugrue video on YouTube. And it's a couple years old, but actually those lectures, I think, were done in the 90s or something and recorded and only recently posted. And he points out that the postmoderns know full well what they're doing. And they laugh when you catch them on, oh, you want everybody to have their own reality and no one can talk because they all have their own language too, because language is the thing that's constraining you to not think your own thoughts. To some extent, that is actually correct, but also who cares? We still can't do anything, or we can't do enough by ourselves, right? Yeah, we get Anselman. I wrote a reflection on that once only time. Interesting. I like that. Nathaniel, it seems obvious on a micro level in my little world, but I have trouble maybe thinking of relationship to the macro. Well, yeah, you can't think of the relationship to the macro. You're a Muppet. I'm a Muppet. We're all Muppets. We don't know this stuff.
I've summarized all of existence.
Hold on. Let me make you big. There we go. First mover. Yes. Reflects forms energy. Muppets. Yes. Graphs, earth, matter. I love it. Oh, I see what you did there. I see that, troll.
They're all looking both up and down.
Yes. Yep, they're pointing up and down. Yeah, I like the sun there too. No, that's excellent.
I don't
like
know if the symbolic language is making it more or less heretical, but I'm just a terrible Baptist, so what would I know about images?
There you go. Well, yeah, so the problem with scaling it up is we have to be doing our little pockets of reality manifestation in concert with one another to some degree in some way. Because if everyone doesn't agree to the macro telos of build the ship to take us off the planet, then you end up with half a Dyson sphere and half a ship. And that's a problem. How do you solve that problem? Boy, you better have some commonality, right? Common sense is the sense making or senses that we have in common. But that's not referring to our regular senses like smell and touch and whatnot, right? It's referring to our sense of telos.
In The Expanse, the pirates stole it. The pirates stole the ship, and then they called it diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm pretty sure that was what they called it after the pirates stole the ship.
Can confirm. Anselman, that was a standard iconic divine hand. I don't know what you're talking about, Anselman. Sally, do you have any idea what Anselman's talking about?
How I could.
I didn't see it. I don't know what he's talking about. I got no idea, Anselman.
It was better than Teletubby Sun, because that was the first thing that came into my mind. And I was like, nah, I'm going to skip the Teletubby Sun. Wanted it to have more authority.
I don't know. Yeah, the Teletubby song is pretty good though.
No, the sun. The sun is a baby.
Oh, the sun. I see. Oh, the baby. That's right. So you were going to use that whole Teletubby motif.
I mean, it is the whole Teletubby motif is this motif because they just have a bunch of innocent children in the grass with another innocent children in the sky above, and the food just miraculously comes out and the vacuum just miraculously vacuums.
Whoa, what's playing in the background? The computer is going crazy. Stupid computer.
So did you get to go over the difference between the waiting for heaven or waiting to go to heaven and bringing heaven to earth? Or are you skipping it intentionally?
No, why would I talk about that? That's way too religious.
Fine. Never mind.
I don't talk about stuff like that. Nathaniel, if I'm honest, I might not have a working definition of postmodern. Well, look at our stream from earlier, what I did with Manuel. Or at least I'm terrible at expressing the dangers to anyone around me. Well, look, here's a video on postmodernism that I did that was validated by Sugru's video, which is much shorter and much better in many ways, but also. Anselman's talking about the Son of Righteousness. Like, what is wrong with this guy? It's like crazy Christians are not trustworthy on my stream. They say weird things. Ignore the Christians. It's all secular here.
We'll just go with first. It's fine.
It's all nice and secular. We're not gonna step in that hole. There's a link to the Sugru video in the live stream. Maybe I'll post a live stream next. Jesse's allegedly here, but
so how would you do a Telos for a good plumber and then a Telos for a bad plumber as examples? Or maybe you've already done tendencies in
the Telos for the bad plumber might be trying to support his family, but the Telos for the good plumber might be trying to save the world. Because as Jordan Peterson points out, plumbers have saved more lives than doctors.
And air conditioning. Hello. And air conditioning.
And air conditioning. It just sounded like air conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't realize the effect to which air conditioning, which what Peterson points out, has changed the world.
Oh yeah.
Good plumbing and good air conditioning.
Yeah, so
Really?
in
Just-
Charlotte, North Carolina, there is a museum of the New South. Now, I must say the museums down here are terrible, but I grew up in Boston where we have awesome museums, so like bad comparison. But we went to the Museum of the New South. My mother, my stepfather, and I a number of years ago, or obviously before she passed away, and our conclusion was that, in fact, the New South was just the old South with air conditioning. And that was the whole trick. Like, that's the New South. Because my house, I mean, look, it's warm everywhere in the South. My house is literally 10 degrees cooler than the city that I'm closest to, than the capital city. And there are geographical microclimate reasons for that I'm not going to get into. I don't want to bore you with a bunch of meteorology that I actually know really well. But it's hot down here, and without air conditioning, it's unbearable. And people move slowly. And until you get down here, you don't realize why. It's like, because if you move too fast in the summer, you will die. I'm not joking. You will, if I tried to be me when I was 20 down here, I'd be dead. I'd be dead. There's no question about it. Because I was always moving as fast as possible. You cannot do that when it's 103 out. You cannot. You will drop. Like, I don't care how good a health you are. And I only learned that at UPS, because when I was at UPS, there was one day, I remember it well. There was one day where it was 97 degrees that day, which is pretty unusual in New England and Massachusetts. And it had been 97. And my shift was not the day shift. The day shift was the first shift outside of high school. I was the twi shift, which is the evening shift. So I got out of high school, I had some hours, and then I'd head off to work. So some of the trucks that they had, for some reason, had semi-transparent tops. So they were white plastic. They weren't fully transparent, but they were white plastic, and they let in light. Now, these trucks in the twilight shift, for the most part, were packed by companies. So there were lots of very regular, well-packed boxes, no extra space in these trucks whatsoever. Unlike the other trucks that came in from other buildings, you fill up what you can fill up, and most of them were never full. And if you had a full truck, you'd have 3, half full trucks or something. So these trucks were packed with boxes. So one day I opened this thing. Now I'm the unloader. Like, I am the unloader. I'm like just there. And I never sweat, ever. Didn't happen. I just didn't sweat when I was young. I opened this door, and out of this truck comes like 110-degree air. Like, no word of a lie. And it just like washes over me. You roll up you open the thing, and you're ready to jump in, and all this hot air just comes rolling out at me. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? So I'm like, all right, well, that was a little unexpected. Whatever, whatever. It's cool. So I dive in and I start doing boxes. And the further I get into the truck, the hotter it gets. And I just kept slowing down and slowing down and slowing down. I'd take a break. I'd never taken a break before, ever, unloading a truck. I always just open the truck, unload the truck, next truck. Nope, had to take a break. Oh yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. And that was the first time. And then I was like sweating. And from then forward, I could sweat. But before that, I never sweat. It was the weirdest thing. And if I had had a bad Telos, I wouldn't have jumped in it.
I remember listening to your subsection in the monologue about work and people that get convinced that everybody's got it out for them and they deserve better, and then they make it true. And it's like, man, we got to clip that, because that is classic crisis that I've experienced in personal life. Like, although I don't know if you can ever reach those people because they're already convinced.
Well, you can. You just have to do it really carefully. I mean, we've done it before, Sally, on the Discord, but
yeah. Oh man, when people get convinced, the whole world's out for them. Oh,
I mean, I could name a name, but
no, don't do that.
he's not even online anymore because he's all fixed now. So, I mean, all fixed. He's having a normal life that sucks because our lives all suck. But you know, he's not paranoid anymore that people are out to get him. You know, he just kind of realizes, oh, most people are just screw ups and they don't even know me. And the fact that they do something that impacts me is purely coincidental because they have a bad telos.
Yeah.
A bad aim. A bad aim produces.
Bad aim.
Right? You're off direction. You're not oriented towards. We're not truly focusing on something.
I suppose the one that's really interesting is when people think they got a good one, but the results of their actions show otherwise. That's really interesting, I think.
Well, they don't know what they're up to, right?
Right.
And then you show it to them and they get upset because they realize either they've failed or they don't know what they're up to. Either way, it's terrifying. Like, who the hell wants to fail? And unless you're really curious and like to learn, in which case you realize failure is learning. That's the same thing.
Well, they
but
want to reorientate. That's the other thing. They don't
Right.
want to. They want to keep going in the same direction because it's comfortable or because it's
well, it's
safe.
easy too. It's easy. It's, you know what you're going to get. I mean, there's something to the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Don't get rid of that troublesome employee because there might be a more troublesome one that you have to hire. You know, you'll never know. Like, these are hard decisions. It's not that straightforward at all. At all. And you never know who's holding what together.
Well, and
You
that's
just don't know.
people that quit working with their family and then end up having the same kind of conflict with someone else. And it's like, sometimes you got to quit working with your family. Sure, that's sometimes. But sometimes it really wasn't easy to start the whole paradigm, brand new doesn't history.
Yeah.
Like, that is, yeah, it's just, there's a bunch of things I'm doing that potentially maybe could be easier and more efficient with non-family members. But then it's kind of like, I can have one problem I understand, or like 3 more problems and still have the problem I understand, plus those problems.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or having the problem you understand is more comforting than having a problem you don't even know about it could exist.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
make a risk calculation. We don't make decisions on anything but risk. Taleb points this out in his books. It's an excellent point. He did a really good job in the books. Really good job of talking about this. We calculate risk. That's what we calculate. When the risk is unknown, we have a lot more fear than when the risk is known. Automatically. You can't use objective material reality to calculate this, you know, because there isn't a gauge theory. There isn't a set standard.
So do you think unknown risk is always the highest risk to most people?
Unconsciously, unknown risk is always the highest risk to most people. There are some exceptions, but some people see risk backwards, which is fine. Like, we need those people, right? Some people are like, you know what? I'm going to climb a building with no safety equipment. Oh, fair enough, dude. Like,
I figured out why I've pissed a lot of people off. Like, I think like, I've had bosses and stuff. I'm like, why don't we do it this way? They're like, we don't know what'll happen. I'm like, yeah. So much upset. And I'm just like confused. Like, I'm just confused because I'm like, but we don't know. You just said we don't know. What's the issue with that? I don't know anything. No difference. Same difference to me.
Good job, Sally. Creating existential fear for your bosses and thinking it's a good thing. And now laughing about it years later. Excellent.
Rarely appreciate it. Rarely. Once, you know what I did once? The most miraculous thing I did at Intel? I was like, hey guys, you know what? We don't have to use a black pointer or a white pointer. We can use a gray pointer. And everybody's like, what? We've never done that. And I'm like, but we could. It's a feature now. And then that wasn't okay. But I did get them convinced to use a white pointer with a black outline that could go both on black and white images. Revolutionary. That's the kind of advances in government you didn't even know you needed. And it was like a week of deliberation. I swear.
Here. Sally, you're going to love this. So I'm working on base on AWACS back in the day. right? I'm on a military base, on an Air Force military base, working on AWACS. Now I'm working for a subcontractor, obviously, right? And then they've got me doing desktop publishing, and they need some chart. I forget what the chart was for. It's a huge chart. It's like a one-page chart. It had all these columns and rows and whatever. And they want me to print out this chart.
Their columns. Love their columns. Yes.
Oh, they love them. So they want me to print out this chart, and I'm trying to print out the chart using the standard format that they've always used because it's the military. You know the military. It's the military, right?
Oh, God forbid.
And it's unreadable, right?
Yeah.
And I'm finally like, I don't know what to do, and I can't get any guidance from anybody because everyone's like, "Oh no, you can't change it. You got to do it the way." So I finally schedule, some time to see the Colonel Farish, right? So I go into Colonel Farish's office and I say, "Look, here's the problem. This isn't visible enough. You can see here and here. Most of it is, but here and here are just you're not going to be able to see them. So everyone tells me I can't make a change, but I need to change this so that you can present it correctly." And there's two other people in the office, and they're like, because I'm just a contract. He doesn't even know who I am, right? He just knows what I do.
That's the best position to be in this case, because if you're a contractor outside, I mean, this might be why contractors became a thing, which it's not good, but it was a gridlock. It was gridlock.
Yeah, gridlock.
For
right.
dumb
All
bureaucratic
consulting.
parts.
All consulting is all about that. Consulting is to get around the systems you put in place to protect yourself from yourself, right? That's why consultants exist, whether government contractor consultants or business, it doesn't matter. So I go back, right, and I make a bunch of changes. I experiment with something and get something that's visible and whatnot. And I'm a freaking hero. I'm an absolute boss from that point forward. Because I faced down Colonel Farish, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, look, I'm just trying to help the guy out. I got this job, and I got to get this done, and whatever. I didn't have any concept.
Sometimes the best thing to do is just to come in at 2 a.m. and print it in a non-standard size and put it up on the wall, and then just leave, and then it's just there.
Well, they were his presentations for the higher up, so I couldn't get away with that. But
yeah, oh man, it's just, but this is what is your telos then? Where was the telos lost in the sauce? Because
right.
the telos got lost in the damn sauce, which it's somewhat understandable in a heavily bureaucratic structure, because it's you got 3 teloses going on at the same time. It's trying to earn a buck, trying to not get in trouble, trying to, save the world. And then somehow those 3 have conflicted to, no, the chart is the wrong size.
But you don't know what you can change
Nope.
and what effect that'll have. And here, Mills has a question. So my question is the thumbnail. What's the telos of live navigations? The telos of the live navigations is stated in the live navigation titles before each live navigation actually occurs, and it is determined by the distributed cognition of the Council of Muppets, and that's pretty much how that works. And then the distributed cognition of the Council of Muppets figures it all out, and then somehow I put together a monologue, and magic happens. And yeah, the goal is to do the monologue and get the basic ideas out there, and then to distributed cognition our way through any questions and answers that we have, and also demonstrate community, or communitas, as Vervaeke would call it, in the moment, right? And so that is sort of the format of what it is we're actually doing. And of course, we're doing this as pirates, because pirates, very well thought out pirates.
It was
what I
Sally,
had.
you brought up a great point about fear and how fear relates to Telos.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is in some ways a preconditioned bad Telos.
Well,
or it's a manifestation of previous events that you use to determine what you focus on and what you don't focus on.
Well, this is why scriptures tell you to fear God above all else. Because if you have a higher order fear, you're actually much better off.
But what is fear? Fear is an intuition. It's an intuition. It's not a rationality.
Yeah.
It's not a logic. It's not a reason. It's an intuition.
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to like the unknown or like working with different people, man, like you just it's so easy to get lost on like what is motivating different people about different people.
Right.
I mean, it's bad enough to work with people, but working with people, oh man. That's
Well, that's the issue because people aren't robots, and so they don't treat everybody the same because they can't, and they shouldn't because people aren't the same. You know, everyone wants their blessed equality until they actually get it, and they go, "Wait a minute, you treat me like that person, and now I don't have an intimate connection." Well, you wanted the equality. That's your own damn fault, you muppet. And if you act like people should treat you equal, and they can't because you're not equal, you're just going to be angry and resentful, and you're going to want something to change, like the government or whatever. Right? And that's the problem. Mills still seems confused. Mills, this one is about Telos. So yes, this one is about
okay.
it's not salient necessarily. Salient is a good word, by the way. It's to pay attention to the telos, right? It doesn't just make it salient. It gives you something to pay attention to within the salience landscape.
I struggle with this Telos thing as well, Mills, and in pursuit of trying to understand it better, I forced people to make a list of functional and unfunctional teloses, and we had a functional being answer and a unfunctional telos being diversity, and maybe. Yeah. I don't. Oh, he has
Master of the Universe. This is Master of the Universe mug.
Every stream I do this just to remind people that the highest point.
Higher point. Yeah.
What are you aiming at? Who's leading you?
Well, Bazzini does not have the telos, so we're going to skip his first comment. A higher order fear orders lower fears. Yes, a higher fear orders lower fears. That is correct.
It would be. I think this is a lot of what a lot of self-help does when they're talking to you about writing down your day or writing down what you're doing enough so that you can go back and look at it and see what you're up to, and it's actually helping you discern what's motivating you, like what you're toward. Right. Because sometimes it's sneaky and you think that you know and then you figure it out later.
It's always sneaky because what are you doing? You're doing something in the present, and if you don't write it down, you're going to rationalize it and misremember it every time. It's very reliable, right? But then if you write it down, what you've done is you re-enchanted time and said, well, at the time I thought I was doing this. And then you can look at the end result and go, but this happened, and now I have a contrast, and now I can see, and now you can say, well, why did that happen? Oh, I don't know what I'm up to.
I have figured out when I'm doing a bunch of stuff and trying to get things done, and then out of nowhere, I'm like starting to get irritated. I don't think that I'm irritated with someone. And sometimes I can just go lay down for 10 minutes. And then it was like, I was actually just tired. I was just tired. It wasn't irritated anybody.
Or hungry. Like there's that hangry thing. It's like, oh, no, you just needed a banana. It's like, what? Yeah, you just needed a banana, dude. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Sucks because it wouldn't matter how much I wanted to know when I just stopped. I can't tell if I'm upset with someone or if I'm just tired until after I've tried sleeping.
Like, you need to time frame things, and that gives you a telos for your time. So you say if you don't have a time frame or a boundary or way of discerning how much time things take, your telos will be too fluid. It'll be your focus, your aim will be misguided. It'll sway with the wind in some sense.
Well, there are plenty of familial reasons for not getting to be master of your own time. And if you're going to do anything besides one thing, you're going to be subject to disruption. And that's just how
I wasn't talking about time purely. I was talking about time in a frame. The frame actually matters more than the container in some points. Like, it's a time frame. the time frame determines the actions that will or won't happen. The potential, as Mark's talked about. You frame things in a time for a certain amount of potential to manifest. Manifest. Yeah.
Well, and that's why, but that's why people are helped with efficiency by the Pomodoro technique, or by an agile software development time boxing, right? Like, yeah, you create a contrast around time, and all of a sudden, a bunch of things sort of fix themselves to some extent, right? Because now you can control the risk, because you're only going to spend 20 minutes on the Pomodoro technique, or you're only going to guess about the next 4 hours of work, or whatever it is, right? So all those tactics work really, really well. You got to close your door, Jesse. Come on. Sometimes he remembers, sometimes he doesn't. Ethan, whoops. All you have to do is impose a, quote, bad telos in people, and they will do all the work of destruction for you. That is true. They will. It's very accommodating of them. Also, they're probably zombies and have no idea. I personally know somebody that truly believes that every position in the hierarchy is directly correlated to how tyrannical they are. Well, yeah, that's true. The adoption of the telos ensures total skepticism, cynicism. Right, because you're assuming the end result. You're saying hierarchy is related to tyranny, and therefore, right, and then you're backwards reasoning again, and which destroys all trust and potential trust, and thus destroys the world. Exactly. You can't cooperate with other people. You're screwed. And then Mills is pointing out, Ethan, I think you're describing a large swath of people who actually enact that when they move up the hierarchy. Well, look, we're all in the hierarchy, and yeah, when they move, right, or even when they don't, right, because what's actually happening now is people are just creating arbitrary hierarchies, and then they're going, aha, I'm better than you in this hierarchy, and therefore you must do what I say. People do that all the time, right? They try to impose that on me constantly. But they do that all the time. So one way they do this, and I've talked about this before, but I'll mention it again. It's just so funny to me. Europeans in particular seem to have a thing where they're like, we're better than America on, whatever. It doesn't even matter, right? And when you talk to them, they're like, yeah, we hate American exceptionalism. And I've asked many, because I know a lot of Europeans, I talk to Europeans all the time, I still do, right? I'd ask them, like, where is this coming from? Because everybody I know in the US is like, oh, Europe's the best, man. Yeah, we need to be more like Europe. Everybody here is like that. Like almost every single human I have ever met in the United States who is from here goes, we need to be more like Europe, right? Despite all the immigration from Europe that we get with Europeans going, this place is great. Not all of them, but most of them. And the reason for that is because they seem to want to be back on top. Like they've all got empire envy. Once we, ruled the shipping lanes, and, whether it's Greece or it's the Netherlands or it's the UK or it's France or it's Spain, right? Portugal, they all had the top spot at some point, right? And even Germany for a little while there, although bad results. They all had the top spot, or were part of somebody who had the top spot. So when you talk to some of these guys, they'll be like, you know what? We put out less greenhouse gases than you guys do. It's like, you're a tiny postage stamp of a country. Of course you do. Like, duh, right? Like, I don't, it doesn't even matter how many people you have. You just don't have enough land to do enough stuff to put out enough stuff like we do. Like, it's just not even a contest.
Maine puts out less greenhouse than Texas.
Right. No. Yeah, you could play that game all day. Right. And that's the problem. Like, people get stuck in this wanting to be at the top of the hierarchy game. And so they create new hierarchy games, which, by the way, you shouldn't play. In order to be at the top, even though it's foolishness, right? Because like the United States, which we did get rid of a lot of greenhouse gases, although I would say legitimately for the most part, under the George W. Bush administration primarily, incidentally, for all you weird lefties who are immune to facts, all the European countries just outsourced it to China. Like we did a lot of that too. They just outsourced their greenhouse gas to other countries, and they go, our greenhouse gas is less. Yeah, but of the stuff you consume, did your greenhouse gas consumption or production go up or down, right? Because it almost always went up, because everyone's trying to improve their quality of living. And that always comes at the expense of the climate, no matter what. Like, there's no way around that.
It's boggling. It's like, we reduced our greenhouse gases. I'm like, well, did you quit using plastic or tin or aluminum or right. Which product did you quit using? And then it's just
exactly. Right, or then they'll go cars. So the funny thing about the climate narrative early on, I think this is in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, is they were saying, yeah, we're going to put all these controls in for cars. So I went and I did the research, and it's right there. Like they're not hiding it. Like really, there's no conspiracy to hide this stuff. It's just most people won't look anything up ever at all, even though they've got the entire internet in the palm of their hands. They'll just never use it. So you look it up, and it turns out that cars in the United States are a total of 2% of all greenhouse gas emissions. 2%, right? And so you say, all right, so if we reduce the greenhouse gas emissions for cars by 50%, which is nearly impossible, we would make a 1% difference in total output for the United States of America at a huge cost. And then you start looking into it, and you're like, wait a minute. 10% of worldwide greenhouse gas production is done by 7 cargo ships in the world. 7. Do you know how easy it is to retrofit 7 cargo ships rather than however many billions of cars the United States has?
Not to mention that when you densely pack people so that they can't have gardens and live like people, you actually increase their consumption.
Right.
Like, dramatic.
Also true.
Because you can't have multiple living and just a whole bunch of things. Anyway, but that's, I mean.
Oops. Telos matters.
It's, yeah, well, the carbon they want to reduce is you. We went through that last week. That's so accurate.
Yeah, I love that one. No, Bazzini's showing it. Right. The Great Reset is a conspiracy theory. Never mind the book by that name describing the idea. Right. Well, what's your Telos?
I mean, to reduce humans, they have it on a big rock in front of their place. Like,
yeah, I haven't done the math, but I did read this math. I just didn't do it myself. Somebody actually said the in terms of compactness, the most physical carbon is a person.
yeah, seems iffy to me.
It's in like one place, you know, like.
It's like people say that humans are the most intricate pattern ever. That
not
seems
even close.
Conceited, and I just doesn't
not
make
even close.
Just
totally,
I'm like,
totally untrue.
Wouldn't pound for pound diamonds be more carbon than humans? Like, isn't
no,
that?
I don't think. I mean, in total, but there's no diamond that big, right? I think that's what it is.
All the diamonds.
But also, you can't really release the carbon from the diamonds, so it doesn't affect greenhouse gases. But you know what does is people. So if you want to reduce, then you got to get rid of the people. There's no other way, Sally.
I think this is. I think it was
you
all
the wrong Telos. Just admit we have to get rid of the carbon people.
I think the Telos was just getting the people, and that's what this. We have to carbon issue.
So here, Nathaniel, right? Do you think people get overwhelmed thinking about a quote grand Telos? All right, dude, you're very postmodern. Something like a big Telos in the sky. All right, here's what happens though. Let's suppose I am going to pretend to be an atheist for half a second, which hurts my soul, by the way. So I hope you appreciate the sacrifice here. Right? I'm going to say, you know what? There is no God. But also, what we should be focusing on is reducing carbon in the atmosphere. Are you sure you didn't just recreate the grand Telos? Like, are you sure? Because you did, right? Like, nobody doesn't think of a grand Telos. Nobody. It doesn't happen. You have to embed yourself in something larger and greater than yourself. You have to, right? And so this idea that, what is it? Is it Francois Lyotard? I can't remember his first name now. Which is what the earlier link was about. The why philosophers are all trolling, modern philosophers are all trolls. What he was saying was everybody needs their own mini narrative so that they don't get overtaken by the grand narrative, which is of course silly because you can't live in a mini narrative, right? And so you get kind of caught up in that. It's like, you know, do people get overwhelmed by the things that are bigger than them? Yes. Are they optional? No. So what difference does it make? Like if it's not optional, it's great to talk about all the quote problems it creates, but they're not problems. They're not problems. Non-optional things that look like problems are not problems. They are patterns that you have to deal with. They don't have solutions and they're not going away. And if they don't have solutions, they're not going away, don't make them into problems because you can't fix them. And if you can't fix something, it's not a problem. It's just something you have to deal with. Right? There's no such thing as a perennial problem like John Vervaeke would have you believe. He's describing a perennial pattern. You don't solve grief. You go through grief and you grow bigger than grief, to pawn off of Carl Jung. That's the bottom line. And then Bazzini claims the human brain is pretty intricate. No clue about the carbon density. Thank you. Telos, our fractal dude. Yeah, man, we got our fractal Telos. We're gonna get on the beach and catch some waves, dude. I agree. We need a higher order Telos to order the smaller. Exactly. Yeah, you don't get get out of it. Nathaniel, I did fall into a lot of the French Masonic philosophers in Martinism for a while, so guilty as charged, I suppose. Yeah, I'm wondering if all modern philosophy past Plato and Aristotle leads to Gnosticism, but that's a discussion for another day. We'll probably have a live stream on that someday, just because it's always forefront of my mind. How come all these things seem to converge on evil so nicely? It takes a while sometimes, but it's always there. Jesse has abandoned us. That's unusual. Yeah, what is the telos of the philosopher you're listening to? That's what Manuel found out. He's like, all these philosophers, when you watch Sugru's channel, they all just had a personal trauma. And they took that personal trauma and scaled it up to make it the world's problem and then solved it there instead of just fixing it in their own lives. Yes, that's what happened. Hold on, Sally.
Thanks, Freud.
Sky Telos. Is that a cat? Did you put another freaking cat in a drawing?
It's long cat being held by God, Mark. It's long cat in the right hierarchy.
Hey, stop using the G word here, or I'll have to kick you off.
Oh, well, the holder of long cat, as we will refer to from now forward.
You just say long cat. You need to point better without pointing too directly. We've been working on Sally's pointing capabilities.
I sound like my art teacher and being accused of pointing too directly. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah, you're supposed to draw around the empty space. Remember?
No. Sky Telos.
Hierarchy is important. Your position in it is not, or rather, your position in it shouldn't be concerning to you. Yeah, you should be able to accept it. Nathaniel, there's a lot of don't worry about which path you take, just take one in that scene. Yeah, well. Oh, Mills is a fan of Long Cat. So there you go. Long Cat's important. I agree. So, without Long Cat, where would we be as a society?
I had one art piece in my Phoenix series called The Crippling Nature of Boundless Opportunity. And a little person on top of a mountain, and down the mountain in every direction are golden paths. And they're kind of just sitting in the fetal position, because I think that is what a lot of people after domicide and like the disruption of home and family, like there are just so many different causes and things and refrains. It's just impossible to discern which opportunities you're supposed to go after. Now, I wasn't thinking about that in the terms of teloses, but that actually fits with this, because seeking to navigate seeing opportunities, if you had a telos, you could see down them with like a laser streak. Like you would know, like if your telos was to go out and find a wife and build a family and basically continue your family lineage, it wouldn't matter by which means you did it. Maybe you'd become a donut maker, or maybe a street sweeper, or like whatever facilitated that, because the point of that is not, oh, I am, like, you're not getting caught up with your profession for your telos. And I try to explain this to people all the time. I'm like, it doesn't matter what job you're doing if you're working for yourself. And they get stupid looking at me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, dude, like I've never not been working for myself. Like done all kinds of jobs, done some pretty lame jobs, done some cool jobs. But like I was always just working for myself and for my goals and for my plans. And like I didn't know.
Right.
I wish I could have figured that out sooner, right? Because it could have been better, quicker, faster. But I did have it. And it's like if you could figure out what you actually wanted, the means won't matter so much. And like freaking bad customer service at Wendy's, inconsequential if you're buying your boat or fixing your grandma's house or, you know, whatever you're ordering it to.
Right.
Who cares?
Right.
Okay. You're not going to be stopped by insane customers at Wendy's if you.
Well, but that's the problem. If you think your telos is to go to school, get a degree in what you love, like teaching or whatever, and buy a house, you're nuts. Your telos should be start your family, right? And then you do whatever it takes, because then you can move to some place cheap enough to buy a house and still work, because those places exist. I live in one of them. I got into this big fight on YouTube comments, and this guy was doing this whole thing about the median income versus the median house price. And I'm like, you can't use medians that way. You can't. It's not appropriate, because, you know, and then he said, even in the Midwest, houses are $220,000. I'm like, I already know you're lying, because I just drove through the Midwest, and that's just false. But also, down the street from me, down the street, 2 miles. Is it 2 miles? It's not even 2 miles, a mile and a quarter. $120,000, brand new, 3,500 square foot house, 2-car garage on an acre.
And
120 grand.
This gets into what is the telos of your home? What is the purpose? What is the function of your home? Because there's people that like, they want the kitchen, the dining room, the bar, they want to entertain, they want to have people over. And then there's people that are like, I want to sleep there, I want to keep my food there, and I want a garage to take apart a motorcycle. Or there's people that are like, I don't even care, I just want to not freeze to death, and then I want to go roping. or fishing, or like whatever. Like there's people that want to live in the hellscape, which is urban scenarios, and they want to have a place where their stuff won't get stolen, half a block from a coffee shop that's open 24/7, and the disco club and whatever that I don't understand. Right. But if that's what you want, you can't. There's no amount of equality that will placate that.
Right.
Like, how awful would that be if the guy that just wants to not freeze to death and be able to fish, and the guy that wants to live above a freaking DJ place and live like, you know, like just have a place where stuff won't get stolen in a city, what if they were made equal instantly?
Right.
Right? One size fits none. You've totally succeeded in ruining the world. Enjoy.
Yeah, and without the telos, you can't prioritize. Do I want a cheap enough house to live in, or do I want the job of my dreams? Because maybe those are your decisions. Do I want my PhD, or do I want a good, happy family? Because maybe if I have a good, happy family, later I can get my PhD, but maybe the other way around doesn't work. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying this axiomatically. I'm just saying that it's possible these things are not symmetrical, and that it's easier to get your PhD later in life, unless, of course, you have a trust fund. Like, PhDs are designed for trust fund babies so they don't screw up the world like the World Economic Forum's doing. Instead, they go to school forever where they're harmless because they won't do all their bad ideas. They'll just think about it. That's why we have PhDs. Keep those lunatics away from the real world so they don't ruin it for the people who actually grow the food. No, really. I'm not being hyperbolic here. Actually, that's what it's for. It's a game for wealthy people to play to stay out of trouble.
Are we confusing purpose and telos? Are they different?
Well, I would say that you need to reserve telos for the larger goals. And then, of course, you run into the problem, what's a larger goal? Yeah. I agree. But again, purpose can point at material manifestation, and it's fine. It won't corrupt anything. But telos cannot, because it will corrupt immediately. Right? That's the issue. Is that, yeah, we have these different words that mean roughly the same thing, because some are appropriately pointed only at material, but telos is only appropriate in the ethereal. It's only for the potential, right? The non-manifest, and maybe the non-manifestable, like, because maybe with any telos, you can't get there, but you can get really close if you're really lucky and good.
So
Is that
if
fair?
you ask someone, yeah, I'm just seeing if I can cause of enough of a stir to move the conversation forward. If you ask someone what is your telos, it's a strange question.
Mhm.
If you ask someone what their purpose is, it's even darker. You're like, what is it? Why are you doing this? What's your purpose?
Right,
The
that's why I use
telos.
aim. I use aim a lot.
What is your aim? Is very surface level. Yes.
Right, but
if you
aim
ask
is
someone what their
also
purpose is, you're grading the bottom of an ocean.
a purpose is something you expect to manifest, and aim is something you hope to manifest. So that's why I find aim useful instead of telos. And
Yeah,
I mean,
and I was
we
trying to
deliberately,
distinguish between between being aware of how you frame things, what the question is, because the way you approach this sphere of potential manifestation will determine what you receive back in the world, or in phenomena, your interactions with people.
right. Well, and you might have a purpose of manifesting something to see what other things become available as a result. Whereas a telos really is the final cause. Right? So the manifestation of a purpose or an immediate goal or something might be the thing that allows you to see the telos more clearly as the result of its manifestation, right? And then Mills is proper final telos always unattainable? No, it's just unattainable in this world. How's that?
Here's the question. This will stir enough. There's the dream state, and then her fantasies.
There's the dream state and what?
When you aim at the dream state, where you're trying to live towards the dream, your ideal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a soft goal. A utopian desire is a hard goal. It's a state.
Yeah.
It's a state of causality. It's a place where you want to achieve, not just for yourself, but for those around you. You can have a fantasy is pure potentiality, right? It's a
Right.
dream. It's a dream in some sense, but a utopia, you're wanting a result at all costs. It's no longer flexible.
Yes. Yes, but I would be careful even with using dream, because the problem with a dream is that your dream is yours. It's very individualistic. Whereas, and people try to make it not that way, but all they're trying to do is
That's what I was trying to get.
language.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
Well, that's why we hammer hard on telos, right? Because we're trying to re-enchant. So we're like, no, we need a new word. We can't just, aim is not sufficient, although sometimes it is, right? But aim is not sufficient when you're talking about, the ultimate or the end or the eschatology or whatever, right? Then you really need telos to bridge that final gap. Because telos is realizable in perfection, but not while you're alive. Sorry. Bad news.
It also depends. Like, if you have grown up with this idea that Armageddon is the final end of all things, and not just the end of something. Like, if you've been framed Armageddon as like it's the ultimate event of all things, wrong. By the way, it's cyclical. If you want to look at, as well as that's cyclical. Armageddon is meant to be interpreted as cyclical, right? It's an end of things. It's the end of this wave round, and
The
things
end of
do
that cycle.
reoccur. End of that cycle, right? And so it also depends on how big your cycle or circle is,
Right.
that you're using to interpret phenomena of the world.
Okay. Ignore the sky telos for a second here. And so you have your aim at the prey, and then you have your mind's eye of a feast.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So that's the difference between the aim, the purpose, and the telos, maybe.
Yeah, the purpose might be to hit the animal, right, so that you kill it.
Or to be a good hunter or whatever.
Well, no. The purpose would be to hit the animal. Because to be a good hunter is not dependent upon the material.
It wouldn't even be the animal. It'd be the sustenance from food.
This is what the sorting it out is.
Yeah.
Because if you purely, the problem is if you purely think it's just the animal, the aim is just to kill, destroy, conquer. Wrong, right?
Yeah.
There's a telos behind the animal, or behind the hunting of the animal, which is sustainability of the tribe or the community.
Because the purpose might be to kill the animal, but the telos to feed the group.
Again, sorry, I want to push back, because even if you're defending yourself against a predator, your purpose, your telos, is not to kill the animal. Your purpose, again, is to
No, she said purpose. No, purpose is to kill the animal. She was pretty careful. She has to be careful. She hangs out with Mark Emanuel. She slips up on one word. You go after her, Mark.
Jesse, like 2.5 years ago, we were discussing teloses, and I was really struggling with them, and I'm like, I think my telos is to make beautiful things, and they're still telling me how I'm wrong about that, and I'm still not completely sure why.
Beauty is a bad aim.
Yes,
Beauty is a bad aim.
But
I want to address these because they're stacking up here. Ethan, aim must be in uncreated potential, ethereal, and not in created things or realized effects. Yes, and then he says, aim must be, quote, good person, uncreated potential, and not in what good person does or the appearance of a good person. Right, that's the idolatry or the dogmatic thinking sneaking in, right? And I got to push back on Mills, not faking it till you make it. No. Aim or telos is all faking it, in that you don't know that you can accomplish what you're trying to. Like, aiming doesn't mean you're going to hit the target. It just means that you have the intent. Telos, intent first, right? Comes first in intent, last in action, of trying to hit it. And so the faking it is assuming that you can do something that you do not know you can do. And that's why the fake it till you make it works, because it has to be true. Because again, you can't measure your way to a wall. That's Zeno's paradox. You cannot measure your way to a wall. If you try to measure and get to a wall, you can never touch the wall, right? So you can't state definitively scientifically that this is going to happen. But you increase your chances when you assume that it can, right? And that is faking it. You don't know until you've done it, whether or not, even if you've done it before, whether or not that time you're going to succeed. Because sometimes you don't.
Any sort of craftsmanship, you have to start from a place of discipleship or copying or mimicry,
right?
Or going from someone else's pattern, plan, recipe, right? You have to start from a place of humility,
right?
Not hubris, not thinking that you've got it first time on time, or or that you can just fake it the entire time. There's a purpose to mimicry, is to assume a level of norm in order to build up from. Otherwise, if you're always flaking it, you're too flexible and no one can point out to you what your telos is, because you're always an actor. You're always faking.
I don't like fake it as a thing. You fail until you.
Yes.
Faking it intends putting up an intentional known facade. Make it harsher. You just fail until you make it. Just keep failing until you're not failing anymore. Like, that's
or until you reach the threshold of I'm never going to be able to be competent at this, right?
Well, yeah, which is rare actually. I mean, possible.
Yeah,
Like-
no, I mean it happens. I
Right.
know lots of people that will never be able to code. Bazzini says catch and release fishermen are evil confirmed. Yes, we can validate that right here on the show. That is correct.
Depends
Just
on what
let the fish go, man. Why'd you bother to catch if you're gonna let it go? I mean, come
maybe
on,
they just
really.
wanted to catch it. Is it wrong to know if you can catch it?
Well, the sharper the knife, the easier the cut, and that's where I think I would land. Is you're in the process of becoming the right thing for the right job would be one way to put it.
Well, yeah, because if you're becoming an artisan, especially, is the end product the thing you're making, or is the end product your ability to make the things you're making?
Well, the artist is always far more interesting than his actual art.
Yeah.
Over time, you can see that pattern.
Yeah,
Like
well,
Van
if you're
Gogh.
making
Van Gogh
things,
is my favorite. So Van Gogh is more interesting than his actual art.
well, you
So
have
the
to
art
be
has to
right
come
because
from
you
somewhere. It has to
have
manifest.
to imbue the art with interest, and that means you have to have the interest to give. But if you have it to give, you must have more, right? Than unless you put it all in one piece, which I mean, I suppose some artists do, right? But yeah, of course, there has to be more there. Plus, you're an agent. The art is
Then you're
static.
done.
Once it's been imbued with interest, it decays immediately because entropy is real.
Which is why photography. I actually listened to you guys talk on Sally Joe's channel. Shout out to Sally Joe. I'll finally listen to that Salience talk about art and art history. We should
How'd
do
you
it
like
again.
it?
We should do it
Yeah.
again. We should make points and we should do them all here again. There's a Council of Muppetry. I think we can do it again.
Many more
Well, we
years
should
from school now.
maybe we should just have a Council of Muppets YouTube channel, and then we can do special streams of 3 or more, and just circumambulate single Muppet topics.
Sounds fine with me.
I
I think there's a Telos to doing it under navigating patterns, though.
We
We're
could
just-
do it there too.
It's fine.
Contrast. If we're always too heady in never applications.
I'm glad you liked it. I was so into those topics at that time, and then right now, it's not that I don't care about them, but they just feel further away. I was so into the culture war, and now I'm just like, how can I make things actually happen?
Well, this is what COVID has done. COVID has kind of realigned a lot of people's Telos.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You can see pre-COVID, there was a zeitgeist, a spirit circulating around certain topics, and then COVID has kind of redistributed all this cognitive.
No,
I'm
What-
sure you meant fake news virus scamdemic, but yes, also that.
You have to use a concrete word to point to a phenomena, otherwise you're forever pointing to.
No, you don't
things
want to. No, you don't ever want to point to that phenomena ever. You want to pretend that phenomena was fake because it was fake. Well, because you need to disenchant it, right? Because it enchanted.
Oh,
people.
I know, but
Right. Well, you need to disenchant it, so you need to add all the indirect pointer words on purpose. Like it's actually really important.
for me to disenchant it, I'd be kicked off the internet. So.
No, I don't think so at all. No, you can get away with these things. You just gotta be really careful and consistent. That's all.
Well,
Yes, there you go.
we talk
Want to
about
know about Telos? There you go. Be careful and consistent.
we
with our
talk.
Telos.
We think there's clean your room, set your household in order, and then contribute to the community. And in the last year and a half, I've realized I was off a little, and I'm still in the setting my household in order process, and very minimally in the contribute to broader spectrum things.
Your household's in very good order, and you're contributing tremendously to.
It's
to the
not
community.
Peterson level order, Mark.
80-20.
No, it is. It
80-20.
is. You want military order, and that's not gonna
No,
happen.
military order. I want-
80-20 is a great rule. 80-20 is a great rule.
This is
And-
true. This is
And you're
absolutely.
always the stages are always of having different things in the right. You're forever distributing your energy.
I want to get back to that, to the video that Sally and I did so long ago. Ethan, the true appearance of, quote, good person will reveal themselves to you only after you successfully adopted the telos of, quote, good person. That is true. And Bazzini says the telos of the pickup artist. Well, look, it's explicit, right? The pickup artist is trying to get a material interaction with somebody instead of intimacy. It's part of the intimacy crisis, right? And that's the thing. You know, it's kind of explicit. And then Mills, setting your telos being aspirational plus devotion and indwelling. Am I missing an ingredient? So many ingredients. So many ingredients. This is part of the problem. Like, the world is super complex, and re-enchanting it sucks because you have too much to track. So the question is, where should you stop trying to track things and just submit to the distributed cognition, the institution, I'm not here to answer that. I can't answer that. I know what my answer is. And you can just ask me and I can just tell you, no, I just outsource that here, or I just do this here, or I do my own research there. Right. And then look, I'm fairly upfront. Like, no, I did the research. No, I didn't do the research on that. I just believed somebody else. Right. Because it's important to see people do both. Right. Like, I don't read every white paper of everything, although I read a lot of white papers. And I also don't just take everybody's word for it, right? I mean, I have some friends who are very, very good, except with certain specific things, and then I know not to listen to them, right? Because they're just not there yet. But to go back, Jesse, the talk that I did with Sally, because she recently rewatched it and said, "Oh, I see where you were trying to point me at certain things, and I was ignoring you," which I thought was great. So I wanted an in-depth on your impressions on what it was and whether or not you noticed me trying to get her to go in certain directions and her not actually doing that, because I still find that amusing. And it's so funny too, because and she can ask Michelle or whomever. I'm like, well, I'm going to try to point her here, and here, but I don't think it's going to work.
You're bullying. It was just not a loved Mark. If you just would have bullied me harder, then I would have listened. But no.
There's a duality to YouTube videos that's hard to describe, because in some aspects you need to be exploring, and some aspects you need to have a structure, right?
Yeah.
And so in parts of your presentation, if we want to call it that, Sally, you had a structure, you had a goal, a telos in mind, an argument, or things you're trying to point out, and other things you're kind of exploring. And then at certain times, Mark was trying to reorientate and say, hey, no, you have some things you wanted to say and you haven't said them yet. So I'm going to restructure or point out where you're going. So there's that. I'm not sure if I know there's a way of describing this, but you need to know more about the thing that you're talking about more than you let on to be confident in it. And so if you're a master of this matter, you talking casually about something, you'll be super confident in your presentation. If you're not competent or not confident in what you're saying, you will kind of hold back, and it won't come across clearly. So there's a great problem with that sort of contrast of having a structure, also breaking through and letting the spirit or the intuitions come to you in the moment. So that's very practical.
You have to balance that. So that was well said. I like that analysis. Yeah, you have to balance.
I was also trying to bring Telos somewhere in there. Yes, you have to. Right.
That was the thing.
You soft your Telos and some. Yeah.
Right. She had a Telos, right? But she felt like she had to get this thing out in this order, in this way, with this chart, right? She worked on it for a long time too. It was a lot of work, and then she wasn't quite connecting all the dots in a way that I thought was good, right? So it's like, we got to connect this and this, and I, and plus explore this. And yeah, there was a confidence issue. And I think that's part of it. Like, your telos is the thing you aspire to in some sense. And so she was aspiring to give a good presentation, which actually it was. Like, there's nothing wrong with the video. It's actually a great video, right? Well, at the same time, struggling with this with engaging with me while I'm trying to get the exploration going, and make extra connections through the exploration. And that was the problem. Oh, Bazzini, the line between encouraging, goading, and bullying is fuzzy, but there is one there. No, I don't think it's fuzzy at all. A good friend will prod with the right spirit. Well, yeah, then they're not ever like a good friend can never bully you, right? And the fact that you perceive somebody being bullied doesn't mean it happened. Right? That's the problem, is that you can't trust your perceptions, and you think you can.
The joke was people accuse Mark of bullying all the time, and I'm like, no, I keep coming back with questions that sometimes I'm sure I know the answers to make him ask again. It's possible I bully him more.
Yes, yes. If we're counting who bullies who more, Sally Joe, yes, she definitely bullies me far more than I could possibly bully her. Yeah, I mean it's yeah. Well, that happened again, right? And I was like, you're gonna have to explain to me how anybody voluntarily coming into a voice chat and staying there is being bullied. Like, just tell me how that's possible. Go ahead. I'm open. I'm open to learning something new that I don't know today, but I don't think it's possible. So.
That doesn't mean I'm happy with all of his opinions, but when I already know what they are and then bash them up against the wall several hundred times to figure out my why, yeah, like, no.
Yeah. Pretending you don't understand my point just to get it totally fleshed out for no apparent reason other than to frustrate me.
Parts of your points, like there's more parts you see, and then you think nobody needs to know what they are or something, or you think they're obvious. No.
Well, that I'm guilty of. A lot of things I think are obvious, and everyone else is like, "What?" And I'm like, no, "You can't not make this connect. Not possible." Like, yeah.
No, the collaborative nature of Discord has massively helped me trust the conversation more. And I was still very much in a defensive art school frame where it was like, if you were to talk about something like that, like the amount of which that was pointless too, because you weren't going to get anywhere with facts or reason anyway. But I didn't know that yet completely, so yeah.
Well, you say that in your video too. You kind of gloss over the point.
What'd you say? I didn't. You
in your art chat with Mark, you talk about the self-referential nature of art. Like, you learn more theory than you do practicality or the applications. Or
next to no application, which was a huge disappointment to me because I was all about the application. But that's just how it goes.
I guess the hidden truth behind there is, if you want to become an artist, you do have to know where you are in the great chain of being in the history of things. Because if you're purely just trying to copy Manet, I'm sorry, you're not going to get the attention matrix of most of the West. You have to kind of somehow recarry on that spirit.
Fight you about this. The sheer hubris to think you don't learn a portion of where you are in the grand scheme of things by the physical application of manipulating matter is insanity. That's insanity. Like, you actually learn that through the medium. Like, the medium teaches you that. The medium is unforgiving.
Yeah. Well, it can. Okay. The question is, do you have eyes to see and ears to hear?
Also is theory, but theory without the medium is like, well, it's hijacked. It's completely, utterly hijacked and bereft of soul at this point, because it was just feminist hogwash. And they were mad at me because I wouldn't take up my victim status as a female veteran. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I wasn't abused. I had good units. I was in good units. There were assholes. They were equally assholes to everyone. I'm certain of it.
Yeah.
But yes, unfortunately, it makes me very salty veteran over art school. Blech. Sorry, Jesse. It's not fair to you.
But this is the thing, though. Like, that's fine. I think it was last year before we had down here on the Great Down Under, we had an exhibition, and it was paid. You have to pay to get in, like $20 to $25 to get in. So it's not like not like just a free exhibition where you can just walk through and you go, oh, if I don't like it, I do like it. You have to pay for the gallery itself is free, but the exhibition of that particular focus, the telos of going there just to see the Matisse exhibition, and people were just breezing through it like it was just a regular gallery. I'm like, well, you paid to be here, so stop and actually look at each thing and like look at the little placards or get the little portfolio and find out the sort of presentations being. They were just breezing through because they don't know what to see. They don't have eyes to see. They don't want to know. And if they're not paying attention to what's before them, they're not going to receive the narrative or the drama or the story. You pick your frame there.
Well,
but
they're
if you're
stuck in the wrong
treating
telos.
every experience, yeah, exactly. If you're treating every experience as with equal portion, with
Right.
equal meaning or purpose, then you're going to be you're going to not right. You're stuck in a bad frame because you're just like, oh well,
Right.
whatever. Is my internet dropping out?
Yes.
Yeah, your internet's dropping.
No?
Dropping.
I mean,
Oh no.
Look. The bottom line is that's the perfect example. If you treat the museum or the gallery as the place that is free, and then there's a section of it that's not free, but you're treating it as if it's free, you're ignoring the signal of the money.
well,
It tells you to pay attention in a different way. And if you don't do that, you're losing the experience and you're an NPC now because you become a slave to the game of gallery or museum or whatever, rather than engaging in the experience. So the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston used to put on, we were members on and off, right? They used to put on special exhibits all the time. And in the special exhibits were experiences. And not everybody was invited, obviously. And you had to plan, and they usually fill up. So like you'd have to get in, or the minute they announced them, you had to buy tickets for one of the dates pretty quickly. Otherwise, you were completely screwed. You wouldn't get in. But those were special experiences outside the normal museum exhibits that would enable you to engage with something much more deeply. And if you didn't do that, and some people didn't, they paid for it, they went to the thing, they made the time, and they still didn't do it. They didn't get the same experience. That's because their aim or their telos was wrong.
I mean, the literal piles of cement rubble, like that just had a good social justice write-up with them, and the feminine napkin tablecloth that was just red food color stained napkin tablecloth that was in the senior show next to my work that was like not that are just insults to the entire institution.
But you can see there, Sally, right? You can see that you can figure out the good or bad telos. It's like, all right, well, feminism produces rubble or broken tablecloths that are dirty with blood. Lovely. Maybe not.
Those got awards, and those got senior residencies and all that jazz. And no amount of skill or effort or care or concern was going to get you anywhere.
No, because they wanted the reality of the feminist agenda to be manifest. But it's a bad telos, even though you can know that you don't need to see the end result. You can look at the art and go, this is just a pile of rubble. This is just a blood-stained tablecloth. Like, those are not good things. So the telos is already bad.
And you can game the system. If you're actually smart, you can just realize, oh, they want made to fit. Great. We can make to fit. Like, there are plenty of smart, intelligent artists right now. Damien Hirst being the chief clown of them all. He's like, oh, okay. I can just make a bunch of plates and I could basically make homewares and call it art. Great. Great money opportunity. And it's a great way to make a statement. But he's playing a game. Like, he's actually playing a game.
There was a young man, a fat young man, who did a casting of his madness and then copied it 300 times and then got permission to let women write how they'd been oppressed by the patriarchy on the ceramic embodiment of his madness, and then had them all crushed in the thing. And I'm like, does no one comprehend that he is a fat man who has found a way to have many, many women touch his madness? Does no one?
I mean, it's a great idea. Like I'm enjoying the premise. It's horrible.
It's horrifying.
horrible, right?
Like,
But,
and if you but if you
Way.
ignore the manifestation in the moment, if you're not paying attention to the manifestation, or you ignore the second order effects, you're like, oh no, the purpose is to crush it. No, the purpose is to get the touches in. That's the purpose. And right, you don't know, right? Because you have conflicting aims, basically, right? Even though they're the same process. Like one process can't have one set of effects. That's not the way it works. And Bazzini points this out. Sometimes people pay to be seen looking at art instead of looking at the art. Well, that's a different telos, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man. But yeah, just looking at
I'm the more I'm thinking about that, Sally, I'm going to use that story. It's actually a great exhibition. It's
and that's where modern art is.
horrible exhibition.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Well,
David
no,
Walker.
no.
Hold on, I want to read this. David Walker. It doesn't expose them. Sally's right. They crown this stuff. Well, sometimes they do.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do. It feels like. Yeah.
Well,
no. What you can do is withdraw your time, energy, and attention.
Yeah.
And then it gets lessened. And it really, that's all you need to do is put your time, energy, and attention to something good. And then there's more time, energy, and attention to the good things. It's that simple. Like you don't have to fix the bad thing directly. You have to call it out, though. You have to tell people, no, that's bad. You don't have to justify it either. Because I do this all the time. I go, no, that's bad. I'm not doing that. People are like, what? Why is it bad? And I'm like, look, if you don't know, you don't know. That's fine, but I'm not doing it.
Well, and like I completely changed a major, possibly because of like 2-sentence exchange. My art teacher's like, what are you doing after art school? And I'm like, well, I'm going to have a kid. And she never spoke to me kindly again. And the thing was, I wasn't 19. I was 29. Like I had already done like 2 tours in the American services. I had done the full liberated woman thing. Like it was not a ridiculous, ignorant notion that I would take art school, re-career, and start a family. Like that's just not insane. And like within a month, I decided I had liked the metals teacher better. And I was like, you know what? It doesn't really make a big difference to me whether I make my surrealist paintings in oils, like I thought I always would, or small metal sculpture. No difference. I'm a surrealist painter. So I just did that. And like my Sands of Time series is my...
something before we move on? The reason why Sally remembers that exhibition about the guy with these copied male members is because your memory is driven by things that you pay attention to, phenomena, but also you're noticing a telos underneath these things, and so that manifestation tells you, oh, there's something important to remember there, and that will help me determine a better telos in the future.
Right. You remember the contrast, like as Bazzini points out, quote, male feminist gets 300 women to touch his junk in the name of social justice. Well, that's effectively what happened.
This was the same open.
It's great. Like it's a great. We have to appreciate the fact that it's a great idea. He's gamed, which is my original premise of this. He's gamed this system. So, like, congrats to you. You're a horrible person, but congrats on doing something.
He was the dangerous person at art school. He would openly wear anti-fissured and talk about how violence was the answer. And so, being myself, because I'm stupid, I gave him a ride in the rain once. And then he continued how violence was a necessary thing, even further and more aggressively towards me until I kicked him out of the bus stop. And it was just the most ridiculous thing. Like, I'm like, I'm the only one that will give you a ride in the rain. And you just happen to know that I support Trump and you're just being an insane person. Like, so special.
David Walker, you're right. Most people these days are going to see good art to be seen. Yeah, well, Instagram vacations. Well, I don't know that it's most people. I mean, part of the problem is, no offense, artists, no one looks at art. No one. By percentage of population, it's actually no one. It's not, I get it. And art has an impact, so we should pay attention to it. So there's an outsized impact for sure. There's no question about that. but no one you don't need to worry about that. What you need to worry about is whether or not you're pointing at the good when those people come around and tell them, no, you're just a horrible person, right? Because I do. Yeah, that's a terrible thing to do. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yep. And then I exemplify non-terrible things to do, and problem solved. It's the best you can do. You can't do any better than that, but you don't have to. Like, you're not required to save the world single-handedly from mobs of people looking at bad art. There's nowhere on the agenda where that's your task. Your task is to call it out, for sure. And your task is to call it out to individuals and say, no, I'm not going to that art exhibit because it's a horrible artist. Or I'm not reading Foucault because he is definitely a bad human being, right? Like that is your obligation, right? But your obligation is not to actually solve it. Oh, and Bubble Viz.
You pay attention to what is being prioritized.
You guys are Buccaneers now. Did you know that?
No, Muppets. Sorry.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, the Three Muppeteers is more like it.
But pay attention to what's prioritized. I keep saying this in different ways on these streams. Pay attention to what's emphasized or prioritized, and that will tell you the underlying telos of the people that are holding the event or making the statement or
yeah, that was what really bugged me. The absolute consistency, like the absolute consistency that anyone with genuine skill and genuine elegance was utterly demeaned. That was what was really in an art school. That was absolutely consistent. Yeah. Anybody who had genuine skill and who was truly magnificent was demeaned.
Well, yeah, because they're ideals, and you don't want to be judged, and that people hate success. And what better way to hate success than to punish it? And Peterson talks about that.
To promote the most hateful trash possible. That's what we're gonna do.
Well, no, but that wasn't their goal. Their goal was to not be judged because they want to be equal. And so you have to hold up the lowest. Peugeot talked about this in a clip. He was talking to Benjamin Boyce. He talks about the inversion of the hierarchy is inevitable because hierarchy is inevitable. So when you're upset about the way it's going because you're not at the top, what you end up doing is holding up the margin, right? And degrading the center or bringing up the bottom to the top or something, which is what you were describing. So Bubble Viz looked up what a gang of pirates was called. You didn't know they were called Buccaneers. I'm always amazed at things people do and don't know.
I mean, it sounds like a great name for a movie. The Buccaneers.
Is this true? Well, they made better movies when it was Goldberg's Telos to make as much money as possible. Really? I don't know. I think the problem is that you're thinking of Telos as one thing in relation to a movie, and the bottom line is there's at least 3 different aims in a movie. Well, maybe 4, right? Because you've got the aim of the producer, okay? And then the producer is going to pick people he thinks can carry out that aim. So if the producer's greedy, and this is, look, Gordon Gekko, greed is good. He wasn't wrong. You can get all upset about that all you want. That's not wrong. Actually, that's quite correct. But it can't be everybody's Telos, right? The actors have to want to be in good movies. So if you want to watch good movies, you can follow certain actors. So like William Hurt is only ever in good movies, pretty much. Like that, because that's his goal. It's stated. There are a few actors like this. They state, no, I only want to do movies of a certain type. And then it just so happens to turn out that they're only in movies with really good scripts because they bother to read the script and make a decision based on that and not based on the money, right? And because their Telos is different. The producers don't care if your Telos lines up with them. They only care if they can exploit your Telos to make their money, right? Just like the sculptor only cared that somebody touches junk 300 times. He doesn't care if he's going to win the award, right? It's the same thing. And so the Telos of the writers might be entirely different. Maybe they want to get a certain point across. Like Almost Famous. I love that movie, Almost Famous. It's autobiographical, right? Such an interesting movie. It's so real. It's so real. You can just tell, like, no, he didn't write this. This is just diary entries. Like all this actually happened almost exactly the way he wrote it, right?
If you're out to make really great movies, probably one of the ways to do that would be to make a lot of money so you could make a lot of really great movies. Those don't seem in conflict.
Right, they're not in that's the other problem. They're not in conflict, right? The first flop you make when you go to zero, as I mentioned, you're screwed. And so if you don't have in your consideration the money, But the question is, where is it prioritized?
Right.
And that's like, you can say, look, I want to make really good art, but I need to make money with it so that I can make really good art. And you're a producer, and that's the only way you can make any art, because maybe you suck, right? So this happens with a lot of, especially in the 70s and 80s, this happened with a lot of songwriters, right? So there were a handful of really good songwriters, and they wrote all the songs. All those one-hit wonders, they were written by like 3 people, and then or they were,
especially in the 60s,
right? Why?
All the 60s California rock was just one or two session bands.
Yeah, 1 or 2.
Like the
right.
entire
Why?
60s.
Because,
yeah, it was just
because they couldn't be on stage or play an instrument. And so their only involvement in the art was writing really good songs. And then you sell them to rich people who just have enough money to play instruments all day. And then they just buy really good music. And then they can be, famous and popular without having the talent, other than having the, access to the expensive instrument. There's nothing wrong with that system. In fact, it's coming back because it's a perfectly viable system, and the other systems just turn out not to be viable. We can argue about whether or not that should be the case, but that is how it is.
Warner Brothers is doing that. Yeah.
People looking at modern art are all snobs. Thank you, Bubble Viz. I like that generalization.
You discussed this, and if you discussed it, just throw it out. But knowing the words, the difference between telos and identity.
Yeah. Well, your identity in the thing is determined by your telos.
I don't think you have an identity. I think you identify with things, but you have a character.
Well, the identity, yeah. I mean, you have many identities, right? So what is your identity in relation to the movie? Well, what are you doing, right? Are you just the writer, or are you the writer who wants to make a great script? Because those are 2 different identities, as it turns out, right? Because the telos changes. And so that's how it affects. It's not the totality of your identity. You can't collapse it. I mean, this is part of the problem, is that in some ways what I'm trying to do is impossible, right? Because I'm trying to re-enchant the world to the extent that you can no longer understand it, to give you a better understanding of the world. So that comes in conflict at the point of your cognitive load. Sorry. And what that means is that certain people are going to have to give up knowing certain things and just give it over to somebody else. May seem arbitrary, but it's actually not. And Bazzini is insisting art school resentment as telos. Well, maybe.
No.
I do have a small fantasy where I become quite wealthy and then go back to class when the grades don't matter to get my master's and just torture art teachers. But I don't know that I'll actually do it.
But you can, in the right time and place, under the right conditions, and there's nothing wrong with that. Ethan, the music expert here. That's how it used to be back in the day. Composers would sell their compositions for people to play. The only difference is that it wasn't only one group playing the music, right? Yeah, the music was, yeah. There's just a handful of really clever composers and writers and stuff, and Quincy Jones, right? Quincy Jones is known, like everything Quincy Jones touched turned to gold. It was amazing. It was like, it's a Quincy Jones project, huh? Okay, it'll be great. And it was, in whatever genre it was in too, because he wasn't like, I only do this one type of thing, right?
Well, Timbaland had that too, but the problem with Timbaland is he wanted to become an artist, and that's when you can actually track the downfall of Timbaland. As much as people might think it's a bit out of place for me to say, Future Sex Love Sound is the goldest album of the 2000s. Like, you can't get a better example of 2000s music than Justin Timberlake's album there, which is basically Timbaland's album with Justin Timberlake singing on top. Like, it's that simple. Like, you can't deny it. You can see over time in that particular person's life, Timbaland, that the more fame and success he had, the more he wanted to be his own identity, and that was his downfall. He was better at...
that legible?
Yeah, identity, telos, purpose, allergies.
I don't.
What?
I just had to throw something else in there.
Physical capacity. Yeah, well, they're
You could say
all
archetypes.
Yeah, I would put archetypes. Yeah, I wouldn't put it that way, Sally. But okay, I see where your brain is
Well,
somehow.
I think what you're trying to say is embodiment or incarnation.
Yeah, I would put a much larger hierarchical diagram with archetypes and telos just below it and identity below telos, right? And then the embodiment is in the person. And yeah, I do something really. If only I could draw. I've always wanted to draw. I can draw. There was a time when I could draw exactly one thing, and it was this old man face thing with the old man hair and the whole night. And it was really good, but it was literally the only thing I could draw. I spent like hours and hours and hours, weeks and months and years learning to draw that one thing.
So would
What's
you?
on your board today? What's on the whiteboard, Mark?
Oh, you can't see the whiteboard?
Clock.
There's a compass there. There's a bow and arrow pointing at the sun. There's two people pointing up at the sun. And the compass is doing orientation, not mere direction, because that's what a proper use of a compass is. It's for orientation.
I thought it was a bird because you've got the
Bird.
sun. I was like, oh, that's what he's trying to bird. Okay.
Nope, there's a boat
that's the
there.
thing.
There's a-
Spirit,
there's a
the
ship
spirit of
with
the
a
dove
pirate ship.
hovering above. I thought
No,
that's where
pirate ship.
you're going.
Pirate ship. We gotta, yeah.
Pay attention. Yeah. Well, this is what Peterson's main. It's sad that he kind of broken. He's on a fifth wave, if we want to keep that sort of framing going. But he's completely broken from his original set of principles in some ways. He used to talk about attention and potential. He used to talk about things similar to what we discuss here on the channel.
Yeah.
And now
he can't resolve them, right? Because he's talked about them in the scientific frame, and then you can't solve them. And therefore, when you talk about them in the scientific frame, you run into a problem. And this is so if you ask the Christians, they're like, oh, the answer is you need to go to church. No, that will make it worse, actually. But at least he used to talk about them. And see, I understand that no, the way you do this, if you want to exemplify attention, you use contrast. That's how you do it, right? And then if you want to, once you've exemplified attention, if you want to move attention, you just point, right? And then that solves that problem. And people don't understand that whole thing. I did want to address this, Ethan. Mark, please show us your old man face, dude. When I get in the shed someday and go through all the stuff, I'm sure I have an old man face in there somewhere, and I will, but it's in a box somewhere in a shed over there, right over there in the darkness somewhere.
I'm trying to lay out how the individual or like how these things like have relationship to the person, I guess. And I'm trying to see if they go through each other, like are they subordinate or are they all relating directly? That's why I threw out.
They're subordinate. It's all hierarchy, Sally. It's archetype on top, and then telos, and then identity, and then the embodiment.
The phenomena.
Telos.
The thing that you remark.
You would have
final causation.
Purpose underneath of that?
No, leave out purpose. Purpose is beneath you.
Okay, where is identity then?
Below telos.
Identity is below telos.
Right, and then that's the person. Because you can have multiple identities, so it has to be above you. Bubble is video or old man drawing doesn't exist. I love it. Just kidding. No, I got it. I totally got it. That was quite good. That's right in my area. Right, picture it didn't happen. Yeah, that's totally proximal to the sort of retardedness that I engage in on a regular basis. Much approved. I should try it. I haven't touched. I need a 7mm pencil to do the 0.7 mm. I'm sure I have one in the shed. I probably got all my stuff there. Uh-oh.
Is this the same Nathaniel as last week? Because you have
I don't know.
a
Hold
camera.
on.
You
We'll
should.
do the Sally drawing first. Archetype, telos, identity. What is this allergy garbage? And then purpose at the bottom. Sure, whatever. I would put
Change it to allegory if you want.
No, it's just I'm giving it a relationship with everything else.
I don't stop doing that then. You're driving me nuts and making me want to throw you off the stream forever. All right.
Change it to allegory. Change it to allegory. You'll be all correct.
Nathaniel, is the personality the embodiment within the person? No, personality is not an embodiment. Personality can determine a change of embodiment, but what you're doing with personality is you're adopting a perspective, which is a stance, right, in relation to something, right? And so the personality of being a father is different from the personality of being a friend or a husband, right, or a son, because that's a normal sort of set of relationships. Those personalities, they have to change. Like you can't be honest with your 4-year-old the way you're honest with an adult. Like it's not possible, and you shouldn't do that. But this is not a desirable outcome. Don't do this, right? You know, you can say you don't want a military household, and then always refer to your son as sir whenever you're telling him to do something. Not that I know who does that or anything, but you could.
It's fine to foster dignity in the youth.
It's freaking hysterical. It makes me laugh every time you do that. We're not doing that today, sir. And I'm just like, he's the poor kid. Like the trauma you're creating in his brain is glorious. So yeah, I mean, I think that look, your personality is your stance. It's your perspective. It's how you're approaching something outside of yourself based on the identity, which again is based on the telos, right? If you're identifying as the character in the show Severance, your relationship to work is going to be broken, right? But that's a function of you and not a function of work, because the relationship involves both. And this is where people have a problem. They want control. So they want to know, what's the one thing that I can do that's going to have the outcome that I want? That doesn't exist in any part of your life. Sorry. And when you think it does, you're either getting lucky or misunderstanding the situation entirely, right? And like a lot of people are like, oh, you know what? My spouse lets me do whatever I want. And that's their expression of love. And therefore, everything's fine. And then they get a divorce, right? Peterson talked about that. Like they think everything's fine. And then bang, there's a divorce. And they're like totally shocked. Well, we were getting along fine. We had no fights whatsoever. Yeah, that's because the stuff was building up, and you didn't you weren't able to engage with that. Nathaniel, that helps. Oh, good. I'm glad. Based on identity, the difference between the two is very helpful. Well, there we go. That's what we're all about, making the differentiations that help people. And the problem is, it doesn't necessarily help you resolve anything or do anything, but it does help you gain an appreciation and its subtlety so that you understand different ways of looking at the world, so you're not confusing things like saying, well, really, everyone just does something for money, and corporations only buy other corporations when they know they can make more money, which is certainly not true.
Okay.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
In the hierarchy, we got archetype, telos, identity, throwing out the physical reality for. So if I was trying to embody that by question, would ask themselves, is this a like plausible relationship? Like, who am I? What am I up to? What can I be doing?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool.
The problem I will insert here is you almost will never be able to slip. If you put that question there at the bottom, you'll almost never be able to solve it.
Yeah, but this isn't
right. Well, also the problem with that is you need to point them at the future. I mean, one of the clever things Peterson does is re-enchant time by saying, you are who you are now. You were someone else in the past, and you can, if you could be whatever you wanted to be, right? And it's like, oh wait, there's 3 perspectives on time, like where I came from and what I was, right? Who I am now and what I'm doing and what I could be doing. Oh, that's different from what can I do. So yeah, you just need to
probably better to say, who am I becoming?
Who could I become?
Right,
not who am I becoming? Who could I become?
Well, yeah.
you
it's-
don't
it's
want to
kind of
make it a
weird when I-
deterministic thing, right? I don't know who I'm
Wow.
becoming. Like, I have
Sometimes
no
you do.
idea.
You want to scare people.
Right. Yeah, I'm becoming a monster. Yeah.
Exactly. But that is the thing, though. Like the level to which you frame a question to tell someone is appropriate to the level of reaction that you need to stir within them.
Well,
Because some people you do actually need to shake them
yeah.
a bit in order, if it's literal, right? You need to give them
No, you always
symbolic,
do.
so it gives a rock and a shoe that they have to walk with and go, oh, I can't shake that
Right.
because
the
Right.
steps
they're
all,
identifying with the wrong things. That's
the
what you
steps
do.
all the way to the bottom are what Peterson was able to do with a lot of these things. And I think if you just put out, you need to get your telos figured out, that's like impossible. So I have been trying to pick apart telos this whole time to like, okay, say I agree, how could it even? And then the sorting it into questions sometimes works for me. And like, yeah, that might be good with the who could I be, but these aren't stagnant. These are like the blossoming of a rose, because that is actually what life is like. We're not a
I agree
station
with that.
object. We're a thing moving through time, and it is the change that might actually make it worthwhile. So yeah, it's more like a skating trick or
Yes.
something
Right.
like that.
Well, it's a movement, right?
the-
And it's a movement through time and space at the
Yeah.
same
Well,
time.
and that's the way music is. Yeah.
All right, Bazzini. Jesse is a fellow rock in the shoe enjoyer. Okay. I don't know how true that is. But all right. Well, look, it's been like 3 hours, so I think I'm going to shut this stream down and open up the live after party stream if you guys are willing. So
Yeah.
there'll be like a 10-minute
I've
gap
no-
in between.
I have
Ooh,
another hour, so I got 45 photos to edit. So headshots.
Oh yeah, what are you
So that's
editing
my
there,
Telos.
Jesse?
I got some headshots, corporate headshots
Nice.
to do. So takes time. And then next
Yeah.
weekend, although sadly maybe Mark has ended on his monologue on this point, so maybe in 2 weeks we could do a Muppet stream if Mark's not going to be here. We could take over this time slot. We could
maybe
navigating Muppets. Or maybe I could subscond Adam.
my hard times for recording are very nominal.
Yes, we
That's an
understand. But yeah, you guys are welcome to. I mean, I can facilitate and stuff. I just can't join in because I'm going to be busy
That's
for the next 2 Fridays. But yeah, we can set that up. There's a
I'm
way to
busy
do it.
next the Friday after that. It'd be fun.
Oh, well, that's perfect. If you're not around and I'm not around, then that's great. But all right, I'm gonna jump off. I'm gonna close this stream and open another one in like 10 minutes. And anybody who wants to join is welcome. And I hope somebody will join because that'll be more fun. But if not, I will, bear it for a while on my own and then leave. But yeah, I will be back, and whoever wants to come back will also be back. And otherwise, I will see you in like 3 weeks, unfortunately. But that's how these things roll. Maybe sooner. Maybe I'll do a midweek live stream or something.
If you're here, guys, you're watching, you can come on. It is not scary to come on and try and talk to people on the internet. Just
Baz is
humble.
calling it a night. That was fun. Good. I'm glad it was fun. All right, guys. Well, if you're willing, I'll be back on, and anybody can jump in and just chat. It'll be fine. We don't have to talk about Telos. We can talk about anything. So we'll see you back again soon in just a few moments.